Chapter 3. The sisters had gone to a party the previous night thrown by friends. None other than Naruto was there chatting up Phoebe. As he was saying his goodbye, he kissed Phoebe's hand. With that, Phoebe felt a premonition come to her. She could see herself, with Naruto making mad passionate love. She couldn't see him. He was behind her. But she could feel his presence, his whiskers rubbing into the back of her neck. His hands softly massaging her breasts, and then an earth-shattering orgasm hit home. Phoebe felt her body flush as her legs turned to jello. Naruto then moved to Piper and repeated the same thing. Though for obvious reasons she wasn't as affected as her sister. While this was going on, Prue had ran into Andy and made some excuse to leave. The next day Phoebe was sitting in the kitchen at the table munching on a snack. She had thrown on a red tank top and black skirt. So how big was this dog again? Phoebe asked as Prue walked by her to the sink. Huge. Didn't you see those scratches on the attic door? Prue reminded Phoebe, turning away again as she cleaned up the counter space. She herself was wearing a similar red top with blue jeans. What was it doing in the house? Piper asked, coming into the kitchen wearing a cream-colored dress. I don't know. Someone obviously left the front door open again. Prue said, turning to Phoebe with an accusatory look. Why do you always assume it was me? What about Piper? She snapped, eating some more cookies and pointing at her other sister. Not it. And it's strange, don't you think? Why would a dog suddenly attack you like that? Piper retorted, opening a can of peanut butter as she made a sandwich for her sisters. What if it wasn't just a dog? Prue reasoned aloud. What if someone sent it after us? Sorry, you'll have to try harder, he said as Piper waved her hands, attempting to freeze him with no effect. You're a few years too inexperienced for that to work. Prue tried to shake away the thoughts as she tried to figure out how this situation was going to be resolved. First was Piper's longtime boyfriend being a warlock, then there was the next demon, and not only was Tempest still out there, but now this latest incident with the dog. How touching. Maybe I'll let you three live for now, seeing as it's no fun to hunt down defenseless prey. A word of warning, you three aren't allowed to die by any hands but mine, and for the time being, call me Tempest, the figure said as he disappeared in a column of darkness. You mean that Tempest guy? Piper voiced, connecting the dots. She knew that look in Prue's eyes all too well. It makes sense. No dog I know can open that front door, let alone reach the top shelf. Piper pointed out. Then what are we supposed to do? It's not like we can go down to the hardware store and buy demon-proof locks. So what should we do? Phoebe questioned. We'll try to figure this out later. Maybe consult the Book of Shadows to see if we can find anything about this Tempest. Prue said, taking some clothes out to the utility room. That is a really good idea, Prue. Phoebe puts her snack container on the side, slips off the table and goes over to the utility door. She locks it. Prue returns to find the door locked. Phoebe and Piper giggle as Prue struggles with the door. Unlock the door, Phoebe. Naruto was on his way to the auction house for his meeting with Prue. So far he had gotten to the appointment without being annoyed by the workers who often dismissed anyone who wasn't dressed in overpriced clothes or with a snobby attitude as just another baka without a quality for fine art who would buy goods at an overpriced value. Hello, is there something I can help you with? Ah yes, he responded to the woman. Well miss, I have a scheduled 2 o'clock appointment with one Prue Hallowell, and I heard Miss Hallowell was considered an incredible judge of fine art and appraisals and could find a match for clients that fit their style, which I am in need of service. Forgive me, I am Naruto Uzumaki, and the way you carry yourself, you could only be Miss Hallowell, am I correct? Well, Mr. Uzumaki, you are correct in your assertion, so let us get down to business. What type of items were you interested in? I am looking for a few pieces with a Japanese theme to them. I am looking for something tasteful and eye-catching since I plan on redecorating my home. I want some of it to be a bit modern yet none of the industrial or clinical feel. If I were to be a bit more specific, I would like the furnishing to be wooden with decent carvings for the furniture. The decorations need to be tasteful and colorful yet not overwhelming, Naruto finished. He paused for a moment as his gaze fell intently on her face. I believe we met before. At that party the other night, I believe. You were there with your sisters, but you left early, I believe. Yeah, I wasn't feeling well. Well, it wasn't a complete lie. Before this discussion could continue, Prue's office door flung open as someone walked in. He looked to be in his 40s, bald, with a scraggly brown beard, wearing a black turtleneck with leather pants and jacket. Who are you and what do you think you're doing? Before Prue could finish, Naruto hopped up and pushed her out of the way as the man launched a fireball from his hand. The ball impacted with Naruto, sending him flying against the wall. With a crack, the blonde crumpled forward to the ground. Naruto! Naruto! Prue cried out as she tried shaking the blonde away. The shock of the situation had her adrenaline going. As the man stepped forward, Prue's head snapped up as she tried to use her power, only causing the man to stumble back slightly. You're far too weak as you are, witch. I expected a charmed one to be much stronger, especially the oldest one. What do you want? Prue demanded, feeling a sense of fury that she didn't know was deep within her. For the time being, it overtook the confusion that would have normally filled this scene. The mysterious man looked around. I see your protector isn't here, the man said, looking around before closing the door. Perhaps he is looking after one of the other ones. No matter, he said as his gaze fell back upon Prue. I'm here for your power, witch. Simple, really. With the power of the charmed ones and the notoriety of defeating them, I will at last be able to free my kind. So you're just a lone demon, Naruto voiced as his eyes opened. What? How on earth are you still alive, mortal? Unless you're... The demon didn't even get to finish as in a flash Naruto flashed over and stabbed the demon with a kunai. It glowed as it shot inside the demon, causing him to cry out in agony and glow bright blue before he exploded in a fiery explosion. What in the hell is going on? Who are you? Prue demanded as Naruto paused and turned back to her. He could see Prue was on the edge, so he chose his words carefully. You don't have to be afraid. I'm just like you. He extended a hand and helped her pee, to which she responded with a brief, thank you. She decided to ask the question again. Who are you? Like I said, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. Like you, I'm magical, and long story short, I've been looking after you and your sisters. You were spying on us. Prue responded with an indignant cry as she tried to keep her emotions under control, but the past few days hadn't been good for her nerves. Not spying. Watching. His eyes then widened. Crap, not what I meant, he said, shaking his hands in a defensive gesture as his face made various nervous gestures. Even in the scowl with that little fro, Naruto couldn't help but notice how attractive the woman was. I mean, I actually care about you as people and not as your legacy. Is that better? Legacy? She asked him, momentarily forgetting her anger and annoyance. Well, yeah, he said, rubbing the back of his head. It makes sense, you don't know, considering your situation. You see, the charmed ones were foretold. Your ancestor made a prophecy that the Warren line would grow stronger until 3 sisters, the most powerful ever known, will be born, the charmed ones. Melinda's power of telekinesis, molecular immobilization and premonition continued throughout the line until the charmed ones were born and all 3 powers united in one generation. But I just don't understand something, he said as he stroked his chin with his finger. He took a step or two. What don't you get? Prue was becoming absorbed into this man's little tale. Whatever she could learn would be helpful, as there was at least one demon by the name of Tempest gunning for her and her sisters. Where's your white lighter? My what? She responded as she blinked. Your guardian angel. White lighters are the companions to witches. They guide them and heal them as a witch is a white lighter's charge, and they guide future white lighters as well. I would think she or he would have made themselves known by now. Okay, so roll that back a bit. What do you mean you've been watching over us? Well, quite a few people know the Hallowell name. Your grandmother Penny is quite well known in both good and bad circles as a powerful witch. It would logically make sense that people would do research on her and attack her relatives. And if a woman like that famed for her power has 3 granddaughters, then it makes sense that other demons would be aware enough to attempt to attack you 3, especially after her death, right? True. As long as you didn't have your powers, they couldn't track you, but plenty enough demons live among humans all the time, working jobs, and living in apartments to fit in. Oh, and you 3 live in the mansion, the same mansion that is quite well known. So why haven't these demons attacked until now? Or they have, but someone has been destroying them. Prue finished as realization struck. You've been protecting us. Yes, you see, the charmed ones are seen as a pillar, a major source of good. But I wanted to meet you 3 and get to know you as people, seeing as I figured it might help if someone actually bothered to help you instead of expecting you to stumble through things and being able to happen to vanquish demons and survive just because good is supposed to triumph evil, or there's a plan for everything. Anyway, I have to go for now. Wait, can I see you again? She quickly corrected herself. I mean, along with my sisters. If you can help us, then maybe you can help us figure out our current demon problem. Naruto nodded. How does tomorrow sound? Say around 5 at your mansion. Okay. Just let me inform my sisters. Hold on a second, she said, holding up her finger and going into her drawers. She pulled out a pad and wrote down something. This is my cell. Call before you come over. Right. Okay. He nodded as he reached out to the door. Oh, and don't worry about having to explain what was going on. One of my abilities allowed me to prevent sound from going in or coming out of rooms. See you tomorrow, he said as he opened the door and closed it behind him. Later that evening, Prue, Piper and Phoebe gathered at a table at restaurant's dining room table to discuss what happened. Wait, so you're telling me Naruto, cute blonde with the dreamy blue eyes, is some kind of magical knight who's been protecting us? Phoebe asked as her mind started to drift off on to things not so PG rated. Focus, Phoebe, Prue said, wishing Phoebe wasn't so phobish when it came to guys. You invited him over? Piper asked, surprised. She cupped her cup of coffee with both hands. Despite how calm she was trying to be, she was actually trying to work on calming her nerves. The thought of random demons showing up at her job and attacking her, or innocent people who could shrug off their powers somewhat, was terrifying. You seem to trust him. Well, he's right, more or less. We don't know what we're doing. We don't have anyone who could teach us what to do, not to mention it was something he said. He wanted to get to know us as people. He said that good view us as the charmed ones. Is that how we're going to be viewed as for now on? As witches of exceptional power from some prophecy instead of people? I want to hear him out at the very least. Speaking of which, was anything found about Tempest in the Book of Shadows? No, there is nothing about this guy at all. Well, there are protection charms and stuff, but nothing the book calls for. At least I don't think we do. Do you know what Eye of Newt or Scale of a Cerulean looks like? As I certainly don't. We'll just have to worry about it tomorrow. Right now I think we should take turns staying up tonight and taking watch so we don't get any surprises. I'll take the first watch. Prue volunteered to go first, partly because she was a bit too excited to go to sleep and partly because she wanted to see if she could find out a bit more about Naruto using her laptop. With that, the 2 younger sisters turned in for the night. Lost in thought. The question startled Piper as she slowly exhales a breath. You scared me, she said, smiling at the mysterious man. Just who are you? What you need? What you want? I'm your dream man, so to speak, but I'm out there. I'm real, but not quite as perfect as you want me to be honest. Kind of kills the whole being a dream man thing then, huh? The dream man smiled. It depends. I don't think you would completely accept my way of living. It's not the norm of the upbringing you received. Ah, so it's a religious thing. she noted as she watched his reaction. More or less, he answered with a shrug. Are you real? Real? I mean. You know. Yeah, I'm magical like you. I guess you can say this. Part of me has this ability. It's the path that I was born to feel. Then why not tell me your name? So I can find you, she asked as she reached out to cup his hand. The dream man merely smiled. I wish I could, but I find myself unable to. You haven't told me your name either, and that is the nature of this type of dream. It just puts us in reach, but doesn't quite bring us there. Though don't despair, as I'll be here when you need me. Watching over you, he said as he faded away. No way. Please don't go. Don't go. Once more her dream was ended by the sound of her alarm. She really needed to get rid of that thing. I wonder why he went to you first. I mean, why not Phoebe or me? Piper wondered, sounding a bit hurt. It was the next day, and yet once more yet another occurrence had happened to put a bit more pressure on the sisters' lives. Their father Victor had appeared back into their lives after being gone for so many years. Piper, it's not like I won the lotto. Prue responded bitterly. What was he like? Did he ask about us? Phoebe asked anxiously. She was hardly out of diapers when he left, and she had no memories of him. As a result, she didn't hold the same ire that Prue had towards him. Actually, no. Phoebe looks away, disappointed by the response. Phoebe, think about it. He abandoned us. He was a no-show for 20 years, and then, what, suddenly here he is. Why now? She just felt so angry, so abandoned, so hurt. After over 2 decades, he wanted to show up and become a part of their lives. As far as Prue concerned, he missed his chance. Maybe he just wants to be part of our lives, Piper suggested, glancing at Prue hopefully. Prue looked back at Piper and shook her head. After all this time, don't get your hopes up, she replied, trying to keep rational without hurting her sisters even more. Piper looked silently down at her plate while Phoebe spoke up. There's only one way to find out. Why wait till dinner? Let's go see him now, Phoebe suggested. Will you be rational? Don't you find it just a little suspicious that just when we find out, she stops abruptly when a waitress appears next to her to clear the table? Let me get that for you, the waitress said, picking up the dishes then leaving. Just when we find out we're witches, he shows up, but when Mom died, he was nowhere to be found. He sent us birthday cards, Phoebe added. Selective memory, Prue retorted, crossing her arms pointedly. Grams always told us that he was a threat to us. There's no reason to think that that's changed. Prue, it's not that I don't see your point, but you knew him. We didn't. Why can't we have a chance to know him now? Piper questioned. Prue sighed and glanced at Piper, trying to think of the best way to say what needed to be said. Because we really don't know why he's here, and until we do, we can't trust him, she said decisively. At the hotel that Prue mentioned their father stated, Phoebe decided to visit. Arriving at the door, the receptionist said he was in. She knocked on the door. Entres, Victor Bennett's voice called through the door. Phoebe opens the door and steps inside. She finds Victor having a massage. Daddy, she asked, her voicing cracking from nerves. The man looked over in surprise and pushed up from the massage table. Well, isn't this a nice surprise? He said, smiling as he got to his feet for a better look at his daughter. I'm sorry just to show up like this. I know I was supposed to wait until dinner, but Phoebe rambled, biting her lip slightly. No, nonsense, he broke her off while putting on his bathrobe. Welcome. Let me get a good look at you. This is my baby girl. Little Piper, he asked uncertainly as the massage lady left the room. Phoebe frowned, looking crushed. Phoebe, Victor whispered, shaking his head. Yeah, that's okay. People confuse us all the time, she said, trying to cover up her disappointed tone. Are you kidding? I should be slapped and persecuted. Let me make it up to you. How about some room service? I just ate actually. Phoebe replied quickly, making him turn around. A drink? You are legal, right? He asked, causing Phoebe to smile. Barely, but no thanks. A massage? I can call Lucy back. Victor suggested, pointing to the door where the massage woman had just left. Again Phoebe shook her head. No, really, I don't want anything. She responded slowly. Victor shrugged and finally gave up. I just wanted to look at you. Phoebe admitted, a little embarrassed. Victor smiled and took a few steps toward her. It's like looking in a mirror, isn't it? You've got your daddy's eyes, you know that. He pointed out, laughing softly. Phoebe nodded and laughed as well. I noticed that, she agreed. They fell silent for a moment before Victor finally asked, how about a hug? He outstretched his arms and after a moment's hesitation, Phoebe fell into him. As they hugged, Phoebe was thrown into a premonition. As she hugs him, Phoebe gets a premonition of Victor carrying the Book of Shadows and he's out in front of the house. He smiles. The premonition ended there. Phoebe gasps and pulls away from the hug. The telephone rings. Oh, they always manage to find me. You know, it's okay. I'll just see you at dinner. I got to go. She stammered, turning around and running out the door before Victor could stop her. Phoebe. Wait. Victor called after her, but she was already gone. The mailman whistles as he rushes up the front walk. Midway, he pauses and looks at the front door. He smiles and heads straight for the door. At the door, his carefully unfurls his index finger and we watch as the tip of his finger morphs into the end of a house key. He slips the key finger into the front door lock and unlocks the door. The front door opens and the mailman steps inside. He heads straight up the stairs. The mailman puts his bag down and tries to open the attic door. It's locked. He uses his shoulder and starts to pound the door. He takes a step back and kicks the door in. The mailman steps into the attic. He heads for the Book of Shadows on the pedestal, grabs it and heads out of the attic. The mailman comes down the main stairs with the Book of Shadows tucked under his arm. He heads for the front door. He opens the door and steps outside. As if hitting a force field of some kind, the Book of Shadows flies out from his arm and back into the house. The house won't let the book go. He turns back frustrated and heads for the book on the floor in the foyer. He picks the book up and suddenly, he's tugging on it as if something invisible were holding onto it. He grabs the book and throws it at the door. The book hits a shield at the door and falls to the floor. He steps outside, grabs the book and tries to pull it out the door. The book glows gold and doesn't get past. The mailman turns around and sees Prue headed up the walk. She's looking down at her keys and hasn't seen him. He quickly steps inside the house and closes the door. He tosses the book aside and morphs into Andy. He calmly walks aside to wait for Prue. Prue unlocks the front door and opens it. She steps inside and sees Andy looking up the stairs. Andy, what are you doing here? Prue asked, stopping dead in front of the door. Andy spun around, acting surprised to see her. Oh. Door was open. Andy lied casually as he strolled toward her. Again? Prue asked, sounding frustrated. Yeah, I came by to check up and it was open. I looked around and everything appears to be in order. He replied as Prue set her paperwork down on the table beside the door. She froze as she saw the Book of Shadows lying on the floor in the living room. Do you want me to check upstairs? Andy asked, pointing up the stairs. Prue forced a smile and walked toward him, hoping he hadn't seen it. No, that's okay, really. She answered and then narrowed her eyes slightly, sending the book sliding under a shelf out of sight. Oh, and about tomorrow night. I've changed my mind. We're on, Prue added. Andy looked confused. Excuse me, he asked. Well, you'll never guess who popped back into my life after 20 years. Victor. My dad, she explained, looking away from his eyes to hide how much his surprise visit was affecting her. Your dad, Andy stated, nodding awkwardly. Yeah, he wants dinner and I would really rather avoid that. Too bad the game's not tonight. Prue responded, misinterpreting his confusion. Andy was about to say something when there was a knock on the manor door and Cinda entered the house. Hi, Cinda, Prue welcomed politely. Hey, everything okay? Cinda asked, glancing at Andy. Yeah, thanks, Prue replied, smiling gratefully. Okay, bye, Cinda waved and left. Nice party last night, Prue offered as she left before turning to look back at Andy. Andy smiled slightly and glanced at her. I guess I should be going too, he announced, leaning forward and kissing her lightly on the cheek before leaving. Prue watched him leave and locked the door behind him. She went and picked up the book, looking at it curiously. She carried it back up to the attic where she halted, seeing the destruction of the attic door. What the hell? Prue asked, though there was no one to hear her. After some time the other sisters arrive home and Naruto arrived at 5, just as discussed. Phoebe shakes her head and takes her cup of coffee back to the table. She sits down. Prue, you don't know for sure. Piper and Prue are in the back looking for something. I know plenty. First someone rips off the attic door. Then the Book of Shadows is found downstairs. Isn't that enough? Piper grabs the yellow pages and hands it to Prue. Why would somebody want the book? Probably for its power, the blonde interjected. It's a powerful artifact and it's closely tied to your power. For one reason, they know what it can do. They want its power, our power. Prue starts looking through the yellow pages. That would mean it's someone who knows us and knows that we're witches. Piper listed off the facts. The sisters couldn't help but glance at their guest. What? Hey, don't look at me. Anyone I know who might know wouldn't harm you girls, as they know they would have to deal with me, and that's the last thing any of them would want. Besides, the less people who know the better. Well, I have an idea on who might want it. Someone like Victor. Prue immediately accused. What? Dad? Phoebe responded. Phoebe spoke up in disbelief. Look, just think about it. The moment he shows up, someone makes 2 attempts to grab the book. Coincidence? I think not. The craft is a chick thing, Prue. It's passed on down through the female line. There's a good chance Dad doesn't even know we're charmed. Piper surmised. And there's just as good of a chance he does. Prue countered, causing Phoebe to look uncomfortable as she remembered her premonition of him getting the book. What would he want with the book? And why would he take it from us? Phoebe, help me out here. Phoebe remained quiet though. Phoebe. Okay. Let's just say for the sake of argument that he is after it. Wouldn't he have taken it with him? He wouldn't have left it behind. Actually, it's probably the protection. You see, certain family heirlooms have protections cast on them, or they are linked to the family, and unless you find a way around them, then you wouldn't be able to wield them. Like for instance, since you 3 are good, obviously evil cannot touch the book, and if they somehow fool the book into touching it, they would still have to find a way to get the book outside the house. I think someone tried to walk out with the Book of Shadows, but the protection slingshot it back inside the house, which is where Prue found it. Wow. You sure know a lot. Man, you must be a pro at this magic thing. Naruto merely smiled at Phoebe's compliment. Just experience, really. I'm more of a fighter than a magic user, really. I know a lot of information and do research mostly. Hey, you know about magic. You think you can cast some of the protection charms in here? Piper said, pointing to one of the pages. I can do charms, sure, but my charms are more specialized. They wouldn't repel the demons, so much as weaken them or a period of time or slowly drive them insane. Anyway, you girls are going to need to inform the police. He started to say and noticed their looks of disbelief. I mean, for the damages. You need some sort of cover story, as people are going to start wondering what you 3 are up to if you keep calling contractors and such out here, yet there is no report as to what causes the damages. Okay. Call the cops and report it as a break-in. Piper decided. And tell them what? That someone broke into our house to try and steal our broomsticks. I mean, please. Besides, Andy has already been here. Oh, so Andy was here, again. Talk about convenient. Did you ever think of pointing the finger at him? Phoebe asked. He's probably the one who scared Victor away. Until we find out what's going on and whether Victor is involved or not, we've got to hide the book. Either that or we can't leave the house. I'll look after it, Naruto declared cheerfully. You girls should enjoy yourselves tonight. You've probably had a hectic couple of days. I mean, you sort of. Well, you know. He didn't want to point out the obvious, but they had been looking rather tired lately. Poor things, they probably hadn't had a decent night's sleep in the past few days, with a fear of a demon just random materializing and killing them being just one of the few scenarios that could happen. I don't know, Prue said, shaking her head. I wouldn't want to inconvenience you. Prue felt touched by Naruto's offer, but she didn't want to get the blonde in the middle of what was happening and ended up getting him hurt. I'm happy to help, or maybe you just don't trust me. He responded with a teasing grin as he decided to use the opportunity to fluster her some more. I thought we bonded in your office. At this exclamation, the other two sisters raised an eyebrow in interest. Bonded, huh? You didn't mention that, Prue. Piper stated, trying to keep the smirk off her face, but failing because her sister's reaction of embarrassment was just too comical. Though that didn't last, as Prue shot them a look that said, don't even go there. Well, can you blame me? You know a lot more about us than we do. You're still going to explain how you've been watching us apparently and what you've seen. Hey, I'm not a voyeur. I respected your privacy. He cried out aghast. At that, Naruto gave himself 10 points mentally for succeeding in making all three sisters blush. Oh come on, I gave you my address and you should have my cell phone number in your call log. You can track me down if you want. It's not like I'm going anywhere. Well, that's settling, Phoebe said with a clap and stood up. See, you or Naruto here will watch over the book, because I'm going to dinner tonight. I want to see Dad. So do I, Piper added. I've already seen him, Prue responded, acting stubborn as always. I'll stay here with Naruto and help him with the charms. Oh, so that was the plan. Get me over here where it's just you and me alone in this big mansion. Why, Miss Hallowell, who won't have thought you had this much game? Piper and Phoebe couldn't help but erupt in laughter. Naruto was definitely someone they were going to have around more often, even if only because how he seemed to be able to ruffle Prue up. An hour later, the two sisters took a shower, got dressed, and went to the restaurant to meet Victor. Piper and Phoebe were wearing a brown and black dress respectively as the trio sat down at their table. It's not like we don't have a lot to talk about. Phoebe smiles. We do. She glances at Piper, who bites into a carrot. I mean, yeah. We have a few questions. You know, the last time we ate together, you would only eat food that was white. I'm glad to see you've outgrown it, he said to Piper. That's right. I was 4. Piper agreed, giggling. Victor then turned his attention to Phoebe. Which would have made you about 1, Phoebe? Victor asked, and Phoebe nodded slightly. You know, you couldn't walk yet, but you could swim. You were a fish, he announced, causing Phoebe to laugh. Piper glanced at her and couldn't help but join in. Victor watched them intently before speaking again. This feels right, doesn't it? This feels natural, almost like normal. Almost, Piper replied, looking down at her plate. It's just, well, why? After all this time, why here? Why now? She asked seriously. Well, I've heard the food is pretty good here and it is dinner time. Victor joked. Phoebe laughed while Piper forced a smile, trying to decide whether she was annoyed at his dodging or if she thought it was funny. Before anything else could be said, the waiters brought their food out and placed it in front of them. Bon appetit, he suggested. Meanwhile, at a nearby house, angry, Upset and frustrated, Cinda smashes a chair against the wall. Patience, my sweet. Marshall told her. Patience is highly overrated. We could have destroyed them right there. Then we'd have 3 dead witches and no way to get the book out of the house. Now where would that put us? Satisfied. I still like my idea. We just kill 2 of them, and we force the 3rd to get the book out. Fritz added. Let me explain this once again for the cerebrally impaired. These are not schoolgirls we're dealing with. These are good witches. We cannot alert them to our presence. At their full strength, battling them, would be unpleasant. However, once we possess the book, we get its powers, we weaken theirs, and they're easy prey. Fritz stands up. You know, that sounds good in theory, but, we've already tried everything. We still have Victor. After dinner, the 2 sisters invited Victor back to the manor. In hindsight, they really should have realized there would be having been a face-off between daughter and father. What exactly are you accusing me of, Prue? For a moment things were peacefully. They were bringing up old memories like Prue's recital and how he was aware that the girls could possibly inherit their ancestors' powers. Prue hissed, crossing her arms across her chest. Phoebe stepped between her and Victor, turning against Prue while Piper stayed in the back watching the fireworks. Come on, Prue. Take it easy. Phoebe snapped, her voice rising while Prue turned on her. Are you kidding me? Am I the only who sees what's going on here? She yelled rhetorically. Phoebe turned away in frustration, throwing her hands up in the air dramatically. Can't we all just take a deep breath? Piper began, getting to her feet, but she was cut off by Prue turning back to look at her. Think about it, Piper. He wines and dines and now he's back in the house he hasn't set foot in for 20 years and the first thing he asks is, where's the Book of Shadows? The eldest Hallowell interrupted. Piper looked down at her hands while Phoebe shook her head angrily. You're just looking for something to blame him for. Phoebe accused. Prue didn't respond and stared straight at Victor. Admit it. Tell them why you're here. She challenged, her eyes narrowing dangerously at her father. Victor looked up to meet his daughter's gaze. Prue, stop. Piper pleaded from where she stood. Prue ignored her and continued talking to her father. For the first time in your life, Victor, tell them the truth. She insisted and he gave her a slight nod. All right, fine. He agreed, taking a few steps closer to Prue, his eyes never leaving her. You're right. I am after the book. That's exactly the reason why I came back. Victor admitted, his eyes flickering to Phoebe who stood beside Prue and then to Piper in the back. Dad, Phoebe whispered, sounding hurt. But not for the reasons you would like to believe. It would make it easy for you, Prue, wouldn't it? If I were evil, well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, I'm not. I'm here to protect you. He continued. Yeah, right. Prue breathed sarcastically. To protect us from what? Piper asked cautiously, her arms crossing her chest. Victor looked over at Piper hopefully. From yourselves. That's why I want that damn book. It's where the power of 3 started and where it must end. He insisted, walking past Prue and Phoebe toward Piper. Prue and Phoebe turned to watch him. But, it's part of us. Part of who we are. Phoebe protested in disbelief. That's what your mother believed too. Before they killed her. Victor replied, looking back at Phoebe. Piper gasped and took a step back. What are you saying? She asked, glancing from Victor to Prue for an answer, her eyes wide. You have no idea what evil is out there. Victor began to explain but was cut off by Prue, who was quickly losing what little patience she had to begin with. Oh, I think we have a pretty good idea. Prue snapped, pointedly looking at Victor, who sighed in frustration and moved back toward her. Trying to make her understand. Listen to me, Prue. That book is a magnet for evil. As long as you have it, as long as you use it, you're in danger. All of you. He tried to explain, but it just made Prue even angrier and she advanced toward him quickly. You are unbelievable. After all these years of being an absentee dad, then you just waltz back into our lives and tell us how to live. She shouted. This time neither Piper nor Phoebe held Prue back as she accused their father. I never wanted you to have those powers in the first place. I battled with your grandmother after your mom died. She wanted you find out you were witches as you grew up. I didn't. I fought for you, hard. But your grandmother was too strong. Victor argued, desperate for them to understand. This time Piper was the one that approached, her eyes narrowed. Wait, you're blaming Grams for why you disappeared. She loved us. She raised us. Piper exclaimed, her voice a higher pitch from her anger. What did she do? Put a spell on you? Prue asked sarcastically. Victor looked away, shaking his head. Believe me, nothing short of that would have kept me away. You have to believe me. All I want is what's best for you. He replied, sighing heavily and turning around toward the door before spinning on Phoebe. Phoebe, you believe me, don't you? Phoebe bit her lip uncertainly and looked away. We've done fine without you. Prue spoke after Phoebe made it obvious she wasn't sure what to believe. Prue, you can't fight this, he tried again, looking only at her. I couldn't, he admitted. I'm not you. Prue countered, her voice cracking slightly as her emotions began to spill over. Are you sure? Are you sure you can protect your sisters forever? Victor challenged. Phoebe spoke up in Prue's defense. We'll protect each other, she insisted shortly. Then you'll die together, he shouted. No one can hurt us as bad as you. Angry, hurt and crying, Prue glares at Victor. Prue, no, Phoebe shouted. Victor is sent flying backwards across the room. He hits the far door frame hard and falls to the floor. He picks himself up. If you wanted me to leave, all you had to do was ask. Victor heads for the door. Phoebe brushes past Prue to follow him. Why did you have to do that? Phoebe demanded. Piper also shot Prue a heated glare. Did you have to throw him so hard? Piper. We could have just talked about it like normal people. We're not normal. Prue angrily retorted before she could stop herself. Piper turns and leaves. Prue walks out of the room, passing Phoebe on her way out. Victor arrived to his room at the hotel to find it open. He shuts the door behind him and heads over to the couch. He sits down, puts his head in his hands and lights turn on. He looks up and finds Marshall, Fritz and Cinda in his room. Hello, Victor. Where have you been? Marshall greeted and walked toward him. Where have you been? He asked conversationally. How did you get in here? Victor wondered, not seeming surprised or fazed in the slightest. I think you should be little more concerned with what we're doing in here. Marshall replied, advancing until he stood right in front of Victor. Victor chuckled and pulled out a cigar as Marshall walked off to stand beside Fritz on the other side of the room. I was wondering when evil would rear its ugly head. Victor admitted, watching the sibling shape-shifters as he placed the cigar in his mouth. Consider it reared. Marshall allowed. I don't know the kind of people you're used to dealing with, but I'd lay serious coin that they aren't willing to rip you into a million pieces and dance on your entrails. Oh, so you're lawyers, and here I was assuming you were shape-shifters. Victor joked. Those are clever words for a man about to be an appetizer. Fritz spoke up, approaching Victor from the side. Cocky words for a man that can't get a simple book out of the house. Victor countered and Fritz clenched his fists ready to swing at him. Close your mouth. I mean, it's obvious. You're going to shape-shift into me and try to get to the girls that way. Am I right? It won't work, he explained as Fritz cast a glance back at Marshall. Why not? Cinda demanded. Victor looked from Cinda to Marshall. Mind if I poke holes? He asked and Marshall shrugged. Poke away. Marshall allowed curiously. After tonight, the girls won't let me or anything that looks like me back into their lives, let alone the house. I have officially been kicked out. Victor explained as Cinda approached slowly. There is, however, one sister I can reach, Phoebe. So why don't I just become you, and I'll reach her? Cinda suggested, leering down at Victor. Because only her real father would know what buttons to push. The ones that will get me back in. If you kill me, you'll never know what they are. You'll never get back into the house and you'll never get the Book of Shadows. The next morning in the manor dining room, Prue was absent-mindedly playing with her breakfast, moving her food on the plate with the tip of her fork as she was reading. Piper is also at the dining room table doing the exact same thing. Both are very quiet. Phoebe walks up to them carrying her cup of coffee and looks at the depressing scene in front of her. Good morning, Phoebe. She doesn't get any response from them. Phoebe grabs a white napkin off the table and waves it. Guys, can we call a truce just for 5 minutes, please? I have a confession. Remember when we agreed to not see Dad? Yeah, well, I did. Single quote. Hello. I was with you. Piper replied, looking at Phoebe as if she was crazy. Phoebe shook her head slowly. By myself before dinner. And I had a premonition about Dad. When he hugged me, he was stealing the Book of Shadows. Yeah, you were right about him, Prue. I didn't want the premonition to be true. I was hoping, praying that there was a perfectly good explanation for it, hoping that he was really here to be with us. I just wanted him back in our lives. He's our dad. Prue stands up and hugs Phoebe. I know, Phoebe. I know, she whispered, while Piper wiped her eyes. Piper turns away to give them a moment, when she sees something on the floor. Hey, look. She goes over and picks it up. She looks at it as Prue and Phoebe walk over to her. What's it doing here? Piper handed it to Prue, who looked at it closely. It must have slipped off when he fell. Phoebe answered, glancing carefully at Prue, who looked up at her for a moment. He fell. What did he trip over? Air, she asked in confusion. More like a blast of air, Piper murmured, giggling. She was relieved when Prue laughed softly and Phoebe joined in. Hey, what happened to Naruto last night? He wasn't here when we got back. Phoebe suddenly remembered as the tension over last night's emotional incident faded. Oh, he went to the drugstore to pick up some protection, Prue commented offhandedly as she went into the bridge. Oh, really? Phoebe asked with a coy smile. She knew her sister didn't mean it in that way, but she couldn't pass up an opportunity to tease her sister. Protection aid. Prue immediately amended as she was well aware that her sister had a dirty mind. I mean for the charms. Ingredients for the charms along with what we might need for spells and potions. Okay. Nothing happened. He just spent a few hours tutoring me last night, that's all. Is that what they call it now? Phoebe asked as a Cheshire grin formed on her face as Prue's face went red from embarrassment instead of the usual anger. Phoebe. Geez, relax, I'm kidding. Besides, I thought you like Andy. It's complicated. Okay. Well, I'm going to go out and get the paper. Quote. Out on the sidewalk, the newspaper laid out in the sun. Phoebe walks over to it and picks it up. She looks up and waves to Marshall and Fritz leaning against their car parked on the opposite side of the street. They wave back. Phoebe turns around and nearly bumps into Victor, causing her to gasp. Don't be afraid, he told her softly, looking over her shoulder at Marshall and Fritz. What are you? You have to leave. Victor glances past Phoebe at Marshall and Fritz watching them. Victor insisted, glancing nervously from the shapeshifter's back to his youngest daughter. Phoebe, please. This is very important. Phoebe shakes her head. I can't. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Again, Victor glances at the neighbors. He sees that Marshall and Fritz are keeping a close eye on him. Phoebe, you got to get the book out of the house. You have to leave. Phoebe brushed past him and headed toward the house. In an attempt to make her listen to him, Victor grabs Phoebe by the upper arms. Phoebe, trust me. Look. Behind them, Marshall and Fritz head toward them. Suddenly, Phoebe has a premonition. Victor holding the Book of Shadows. Victor smiles, then morphs back into Marshall. Marshall turns and walks away. He's joined by Fritz and Cinda. Marshall and Fritz arrive and interrupt them. Excuse me. Hey, is this guy bothering you? Marshall asked Phoebe, kindly pointing at Victor. No. This is Victor. Phoebe explained awkwardly, backing up slightly. We were just saying goodbye. Victor added, looking toward Marshall and Fritz calmly. Phoebe forced a smile and feigned buoyancy. Yeah, I gotta run, she answered, waving quickly to her neighbors and dashing back up the steps to the manor. The shapeshifters watched her leave and then spun to look at Victor, who shrugged. What? Don't you trust me? He asked rhetorically. Phoebe pushed the front door open and bolted inside, not even bothering to shut the door behind her. Dad's not after the book. It's Marshall, she called through the house, running up the stairs. Prue walked out of the kitchen and met Phoebe at the bottom of the stairs. He's what? Prue asked in confusion. The premonition, it wasn't Dad. Gotta find a spell and banish them. Phoebe explained cryptically, taking the steps two at a time. Banish who? The neighbors. They're shapeshifters. Fritz and Marshall and the. Phoebe trailed off as Piper walked in with Cinda, who was holding a plastic container. Cookies. Cinda called, offering the sisters one from the container. Just baked. Hey. Fritz steps into the main hall. The door was unlocked. He added as he casually strolled in. Phoebe doesn't say anything. She turns and continues up the stairs. Where you going, Phoebes? Piper starts climbing up the stairs. She passes by Prue. Just to get something, she said slowly. Phoebe smiles at Cinda. Will you save me a cookie? Cinda smiles. Okay. Victor steps into the foyer from the front door. Daddy's home. Prue and Piper stand on the stairs and stare at Victor. Up in the attic, she heads for the Book of Shadows hidden behind the clothes rack. She starts flipping through the book. Come on, she said, flipping through the pages, then stop in frustration. I have no idea what I'm looking for. Naruto from his position outside shook his head and sighed. With a whip of his hand, Wind rushes into the attic and magically flips the pages in the Book of Shadows. Okay, I can take a hint. Phoebe watches as the pages open to the exact spell she's looking for. Reading quickly to remember it. When in the circle that is home, safety's gone and evils roam. Rid all beings from these walls. Save sisters 3. Now heed our call. / closing square bracket. Rid all beings from these walls. / closing square bracket. Save sisters 3. Now heed our call. Okay. / closing square bracket. Phoebe turns and rushes down the stairs and stops next to Prue and Piper. She looks and sees Victor. Dad. You can't be here. You have to leave now. The front door closes and a second Victor Bennett walks into the house and stops near the other Victor. Whoa. Time out. What's going on here? Piper exclaimed, pointing between the two Victors. Don't worry about it, sweetie. Everything's going to be fine. The first Victor said gently. Don't trust him. The second Victor insisted. Wait, last week we had no dad and now we have two. Piper questioned quizzically, looking for an explanation. Phoebe, remember, he steps forward. Remember when you were little and you were afraid of the dark and I would leave the hall light on and the door open just a crack. Phoebe shakes her head. Prue turns to look at Phoebe's confusion. Oh, that's original. What kid isn't afraid of the dark? Victor number 2 snapped, coming up to stand beside the other Victor. Prue. She's never been afraid of anything. The first Victor retorted, pointing at Prue. Fritz and Cinda watched the discussion from the side, inconspicuously moving closer to the sisters. Lucky guess. The second Victor replied and then glanced at the sisters. I said I came back to protect you. Now there's only one way to do it. Kill us both, he continued dramatically. Victor 1 cast him a look of disbelief. You're bluffing, he stated shortly. Am I? Just do it because I want to go out with a bang. The confident Victor countered. Do it, Phoebe. Prue ordered, glancing to look at Phoebe, who shook her head slightly. The spell will kill everyone, including Dad. She responded. It's the only way. Prudence. Victor too reiterated, watching them carefully. Prue. The protection ring. Prue telekinetically pushes the ring on the hallway table toward Victor. Victor picks up the ring. He glances over at Prue. Their eyes meet and she nods to him. Victor puts the ring on. Prue instructed and Phoebe closed her eyes and began the chant. Phoebe. Now. When in the circle that is home, safety's gone and evils roam. Cinda changes into the vampire monster. Rid all beings from these walls. Save Sisters 3. Now heed our call. The spell starts. A wind blows downstairs. When in the circle that is home, safety's gone and evils roam. Victor 1 morphs back into Marshall. The three neighbors start to magically melt under the power of the spell. The real Victor falls to his knees. Daddy. It's okay. Keep it going. All three sisters started to chant. Rid all beings from these walls. Save Sisters 3. Now heed our call. The three neighbors melt into goo and disappear. Prue, Piper and Phoebe rush down the stairs. Prue helps Victor to his feet. For a moment there I wasn't sure what you would do. Victor admitted softly, looking at his daughters. For a moment there neither did we. Prue replied. I thought you didn't want us to use our magic. Phoebe spoke her thoughts aloud from where she stood beside Piper. I didn't. Not as long as I still thought of you as my little girls. But you're obviously not anymore. He explained. We're still your little girls, we're just. Piper began and Prue smiled, taking over her train of thought. Witches. Prue and Piper giggled softly and Victor glanced between them. Yeah, witches. Who obviously don't need your old man to protect you from anything. He agreed softly as he pulled his eldest daughter into their first hug since he'd left those years ago. Later on in the sitting room. No, Andy, I'm fine, really. Dad's going to be here any minute, so can I take a rain check on dinner? Okay. Thanks for the good advice. Bye. Phoebe and Piper join her. They're all dressed and ready to go out. So, he's Dad now? She asked curiously and Prue rolled her eyes. Yes, Phoebe, he is. And by the way, my dress looks good on you, but, Prue hinted while Phoebe frowned and gave her eldest sister a pleading look. I don't have any nice clothes, Prue, she pleaded, and Piper smirked at the all too familiar conversation. Dad said it was casual. Prue reminded her. I don't care. I want to look nice for him. Who knows how long it will be before we see him again? Phoebe asked in that childish voice of hers when she was trying to come off as cutesy. You don't think he's going to stay around? Piper asked, glancing at her sisters. Well, let's just say I no longer have a romanticized image of him, and I'm glad about that, actually. At least Dad is real now. And at least he's not a monster, which is very reassuring, considering we share his genes. I'm just glad he came back, no matter how long he stays. It feels kind of nice feeling like a normal family again, whatever that means. Phoebe nods in agreement. They lapse into silence. The doorbell rings. Speak of the devil. Piper turns to answer the door. Hi. You must be Mr. Wyatt, she said as the tall man with blondish hair walked in. Wide eyes with surprise, the handyman. Call me Leo, he offered quickly, causing Phoebe to smile. Gladly, Phoebe replied. Leo laughed slightly and then looked around at the manor with interest. He holds out the envelope to Prue. This was on the steps. Prue takes the envelope. Oh, thanks. This place is you don't find many like this anymore. He stated, placing his hand on the door frame carefully. Piper smiled and looked around at it as well. Yeah, it's kind of falling apart. Piper admitted and Leo smiled. The problem's not the manner. It's the manner in which it was treated. He explained, looking around at all three sisters. I would love to see more. Leo prompted politely and Phoebe jumped at the opportunity. And I would love to show it to you. The attic is right this way. She began, pushing Piper out of the way and leading Leo toward the stairs. Prue, who had read the package by now, frowned and looked up at her sisters. Guys, he's not coming. She whispered. Phoebe spun around to look at Prue before turning back to Leo. Oh, I'll be right there, Leo. Phoebe called and then walked back into the room. Who's not coming? But he sent this. Girls, something's come up. I had to leave town. Can't make dinner. Probably best if we let the dust settle, anyway. I know there's a lot you would like to forget, but here's what I remember. Love, Dad. Prue holds up the videotape. They look at each other, the disappointment evident on their faces. At that same time elsewhere. You have nothing to worry about. I'll keep a close eyes on them, Naruto said as he took a sip from his glass of wine. You said that once before. If anything happens to them. I take that threat to heart seeing as it's coming from a concerned father. I assure you Victor the First will not fail this time. I know I failed to protect Patty and you know how sorry I am for that. I miss her just as much as you do, but you know how these things are. I won't fail her daughter, which is one promise that I won't be breaking. Back at the mansion on the television set, the girls watch a Christmas home movie. They're all sitting around the Christmas tree opening presents. What did you get? What's in there? You can open it. Come on. Victor's voice said from the television set. On the video, little Prue opens her present and finds a pair of ballet slippers. She holds it up and waves it around. Oh, it's like magic. From the video, we hear everyone squeal with delight and laugh. Oh, Daddy. Oh, what is it? Patty asked. Come here, come here. Let me see those shoes. What is it? Ballet slippers. Huh. What is it? Prue, Piper and Phoebe were all crowded together on the couch as they watched the video of a time when the entire family shared a happy moment. Oh, Daddy. Okay. On the video, Victor grabs his daughter, laughs and gives her a big kiss as she giggles. Again. Again. Oh, gosh. He kisses her again. Mommy. What is it? What is it? What is it? On the video, he gives little Prue a kiss. Look at that face. Look at that face. Who is it? Hey, Piper. Hey. On the video, he picks little Piper up and gives her a kiss. They laugh. The camera zooms in on little Phoebe with an open present in her lap, looking around at everyone with wide eyes. Oh, Prudence. What's in there? What have you got, Phoebe? Little Phoebe holds up the present. Barbie. Yay. Barbie. Little Phoebe cheered. Yes. Yes. On the video, the family laughs. Chapter 4. You're kidding, right? Piper responded to her dream man's statement with much skepticism. They were sitting in an exact replica of the manor's dining room. I'm quite serious. I think you should see other men in the meantime. There is no telling how long it's going to take for us to meet. I don't want you putting your life on the hold and miss any opportunities to live life a little. And you aren't just a little bit concerned that I might find someone and I might move on. HHM. A little, the dream man said as he ran his fingers through a bit of her hair. But I won't stand in the way of your happiness. And how else are we supposed to find each other? There are things I'm still trying to find out myself. Like why we can tell each other everything but our names. I know your favorite color, your meal, and hobbies, but things tend to fizz out when I so much as try to find out your name. It's the damnedest thing, really. I'm really beginning to think that there is something more to this we're not seeing. Regardless, I won't stop searching for an answer, and as I recall, you having a boyfriend never stopped us before. Despite the fact his hand had his mouth covered, Piper could practically feel his smirk as his eyes gave it away. Piper couldn't help but feel a bit sheepish at the statement. Prior to finding out about the truth of her now dead ex, she felt a little guilty, but that was before the dreams started to become more than just dreams. They were becoming more and more real now. And he had always been there to comfort her, to reassure her. Look, I might go on a date, but only to help move on. I'm not really sure I'm all that ready to develop a relationship, you know. She said, bringing up the fact that the Jeremy thing wasn't too long ago. Yeah, I guess I can understand. Now, the man started to say as he pulled out a bag from behind the couch. I say we go with this little number, he said, handing her a bag. Pipers looked inside, and while looking quite aghast, she pulled out a dress that made her, dessert wear, look tame in comparison. Oh, you have no shame, do you? Hey, what can I say? He said with a shrug. They call me shameless for a reason. Another day had begun for what could only begin for the recently magical empowered trio of sisters. Still trying to get used to their new powers and duty, the sisters were making small strides despite a setback, or were trying to get used to being witches, but were more or less focusing on their mortal lives, pushing aside their duty until an innocent was in danger or they were attacked. Prudence Hallowell, the oldest of Patty Hallowell, a witch, and Victor Bennett, a mortal. With the power of telekinesis and being the oldest, she was the most powerful of the three sisters. While Piper's molecular immobilization was a marvelous power and Phoebe's premonitions were a sought-after power for those who tried to control fate, the power of telekinesis was truly a deadly power in the hands of an experienced warrior. It was a shame the girl had to sacrifice her childhood to become a surrogate mother to her two sisters. She, like her sisters, was a beauty with her dark, almost black-brown hair wore in a short bob that was slightly longer than her youngest sister's hair. Her clothing was that of classy and professionally. While Prue was the responsible and serious one, the middle one, Piper was definitely kind, caring, and sweet, if not sarcastic and quick-witted. Naruto found that attractive in her. She seemed to have a passion for cooking. She seemed a bit meek though, so he would have to come up with some challenges that would work her out of that. Her style of clothing was conservative and she wore her dark brown hair a moderate length with bangs. Then there was the youngest, Phoebe. With the power of premonitions, she wasn't as reserved as her two sisters. Unfortunately, she and Prue haven't been able to see eye to eye as of yet. It was a shame that some man who was being sleaze had furthered a rift between the two sisters. Then there was the fact her power wasn't practical for combat, so she would be viewed as a weak link. The cry of a bird overhead interrupted Naruto's thoughts. With speed nearly unmatched, he took off at the bird, leaving gusts of wind in its wake that seemed nothing more than a strong breeze to the ordinary inhabitants of San Francisco. Gliding along the street, he made a sharp turn into an alleyway and floated up to the top of one of the city's large buildings. Above head, a large flock of Arctic terns in a circle. Soon they converged and formed the humanoid shape of a young woman with hair of frost. Gwendolyn has locked a pocket of reality where the avatars may be hidden. They appear to be waiting for a particular individual to add to their fold. And the research. No luck in finding the ancient Egyptian potion capable of vanishing. Keep looking then. The avatars are a powerful and dangerous group. There's no telling what lengths they would go to succeed their objective. Any news of Zenku's seal? He is still locked away. As long as there is a source, we won't have to worry about him. And what of the Triad? Zenku may not be a problem until the source is dead, but I definitely know the Triad isn't as loyal to the source as they proclaim. I was able to shake down a demon known as Reinhardt. I read into his mind and he was ordered to kidnap one Christy Jenkins. A prophecy of ultimate power, and she is the key. She is now but a child, but it is without a doubt they are re-educating her as she speak. Who do we have that will fit right in for infiltration? Miska would be pretty well suited. Very well, send Miska. As for the Jenkins girl, she has a sister. One who is but also a child, a Billy Jenkins, age 12. HHM. Put a guard on her. Right now I have other things to do. And the paper establishment you wanted me to track. Right. What was the address again? 21,673 Allen Avenue, 5th and Hyde. I'll look into it. You're dismissed. Naruto ordered the woman who transformed into a flock of winter birds and left him to his thoughts. Many things suck about dying, ask Mark Chow. It's one thing to die on your birthday, but add in being gunned down, then life definitely wasn't fair. Being gunned down by the gangster Tony Wong just because you looked a lot like him was definitely a fucked up way to die. Considering afterwards his body was lit on fire so it couldn't be identified. Elsewhere at the Hallowell mansion, one Piper Hallowell walked into the kitchen. She was carrying a slip of paper and a pen in her hand. She opened the refrigerator and looked at the things inside for a moment. She then closed the refrigerator door and walked over to the desk. She opens the drawer and finds surprise party invitations inside and incomplete. She gathered the invitations out of the drawer and sighs as she heads over to the table to finish them. She adds a bit of confetti to the envelope with the invitation. Good morning. Phoebe greeted, pausing upon seeing what Piper was doing. What are you doing? Prue's coming down. Put those away. Phoebe heads for the table to hide them. Phoebe, you were supposed to send these invitations last week. The party is Friday. Piper responded, exasperated. Despite her good morning, not to mention finally being able to get some sleep didn't mean the stress of normal life then still irk her now and then. And we're right on schedule. The restaurant's reserved, the menu selected, and the cake has been ordered. Phoebe listing off as she hid the invitation envelopes in the drawer. That's because I did all those things. At least tell me you've managed to buy Prue something other than your traditional birthday gift. What's my traditional gift? Phoebe responded, a little irk. A card. 3 days late. She answered her sister in utter deadpan. Phoebe bit her lip, looking a little flustered. Yeah, well, I decided to break that tradition and start a new one. You bought Prue a gift? Piper responded, quite surprised at the revelation. Phoebe gave a slight nod and Piper added slyly. Where'd you get the money to pay for it? She decided to ask, a little suspicious knowing that Phoebe wasn't a career-orientated person. The conversation is halted when Prue walks into the kitchen. Morning. Prue greeted as she walked into the kitchen. She went over to the fridge and scoured the shelves looking for something to drink. Good morning. Hey, I forgot to ask. How was your date with Andy? Piper asked, deciding to put her discussion with Phoebe on hold as to not obviously spoil the surprise. Great. Until he asked me to spend my birthday at a spa with him. Prue replied carefully, turning to face her sisters. Oh, I hate it when they do that. Phoebe responded, the sarcasm evident in her voice. Piper. For this weekend. You didn't say yes, did you? Piper tried to inquire while trying not to be too obvious. Well, my body did. Screamed it, actually, but I don't know. I just have to think about it. Prue explained, glancing at Piper who gave a slight nod. A weekend of rest, rubdowns, and room service. What's to think about? Phoebe angrily slams her notebook on the table. Phoebe sees Piper's glare and immediately changes her tune. I mean, you could be right. Going away with a guy is like. It's like bringing them home to meet the parents. It changes everything. And if you're not sure if you're ready to make a commitment or not, you know, you don't want to send the wrong signal. Plus, you need a week to prepare for a weekend away. I mean, there's the lingerie shopping, waxing, manicure, pedicure. I mean, it's basically a full-time job, and you've already got one. So you'll never be ready. Not even if you started packing this second. Wow. Prue responded, wondering just where all that came from. Bottom line, unless you're ready to put your toothbrush next to his, you shouldn't go. You guys aren't trying to plan another surprise party for me, are you? Prue asked suspiciously. No, never. Piper answered immediately, turning her gaze to look down at her hands. We've given up on surprising you, Prue. Phoebe lied casually. Prue nodded slightly and turned to leave. That's good, because you both know how much I hate surprises. Prue grabs her drink and leaves. Piper glares at Phoebe. Ah, damn it, Phoebe, if you had sent Andy his invitation, we wouldn't be in this mess. Okay, what are you talking about? You heard Prue. She doesn't want a party. So you should be glad that I flaked. Besides that, you know as well as I do she's going to go away with Andy. Now if you will excuse me, I have a present to pay for, which means I have a job interview. Phoebe sweeps out of the kitchen, leaving Piper more frustrated than ever. At the Hotel Neptune, Phoebe is putting her plans into action to use her gift of premonitions as a sign to play as hotel psychic. Frankie, the hotel manager, shows Phoebe around the hotel bar. No other hotel does psychic readings at the bar. It's kind of our trademark. Well, that's why I'm here. I saw your ad in the Chronicle. I am a natural-born psychic. Yeah, right. Frankie scoffed. So what's your act? Tea leaves. Tarot cards. Crystal balls. What? No, I can see the future. I mean, I can't always see it. I never actually know when it's going to work. Usually when I touch someone, or I'm in the same general area as them. It's kind of hard to explain. Unconvinced, Frankie looks past Phoebe, intending to brush her aside. Next. No, wait, Frankie. Phoebe grabs him. Hold it. He stops. I see it. You're having dinner with a blonde woman. She's gorgeous, all over you. Then some redhead shows up. You look surprised. Ooh, she looks pissed. Then with shock she exclaims, "Your wife." Frankie smiles. He turns around and looks at Phoebe. When can you start? Meanwhile, while Prue was at work at Buckland Stock House, she was conversing with Piper, who was on the phone at the mansion. So did you make your mind up about Calistoga? I don't know. I keep thinking it's a bad idea, but then I think, well, what's the big deal? It's not like we haven't already slept together. Meanwhile, back at the manor, Piper. I think you should go. On Saturday. Piper had trailed off slightly before deciding on a day. On Saturday. Why? Piper, you promised no surprise party. It's not what you think. It's Phoebe. She bought you a present. Back at Buckland's with Prue. Phoebe doesn't give presents. She gives cards 3 days late. Prue countered, trying to tidy up her desk as much as possible with the painting in the way. On the other line, Piper smiled at the comment they had mentioned earlier that morning. Not this year. Surprise. She announced pleasantly. And she really wants to give it to you Friday, so could you please just ask Andy about leaving on Saturday instead? You have no idea how much Phoebe has put herself through. Piper picks up the newspaper. She even got a job and everything. The ad circled in the newspaper reads, Psychics wanted. 415-555-0163. Hey, I'll ask, if I decide to go. So what kind of job did Phoebe get? Don't know. Got to go. Ciao. Piper quickly hung up the phone and looked down at the newspaper with a sigh, before heading over to coat rack to grab her coat and heading out the door. At the Hotel Neptune, Phoebe was doing her thing. On a large poster board advertising the amazing Phoebe, Psychic Revelations. A photo of Phoebe in a genie costume graces the center of the board. Phoebe is sitting at the bar with a middle-aged woman. On the center of the table is a large glass for cash tips. You're in a large room with lots of other people. With lots of other women. Go on. The woman prompted patiently. You're standing on a podium. No, wait. You're on a scale, Phoebe elaborated, and then fell into a fit of giggles while the woman's smile fell to an embarrassed frown. It's a Weight Watchers meeting. Ooh, honey, it looks like you've gained some weight. She finished sympathetically. The woman's eyes flashed and she stood up abruptly. That's impossible. I only cheated once this week. She snapped, grabbing her bags. Phoebe frowned slightly and stood up as well. No, I'm not judging. I'm just seeing. She explained quickly. You're a fraud. That's what you are. I've never been so insulted in my life. I want my $20 back. The woman argued, reaching out at the jar of money that was placed on the table between them. Phoebe, seeing her movements, deftly reached to grab the jar before her. No way, I saw you. You know I saw you. She argued back, pointing her finger accusingly back at the woman. The woman, looking irritated, turned and walked away without another word. Hey, you want me lie next time, just say so. Phoebe yelled after. Fancy meeting you here, Miss Hallowell. A familiar cool voice said, causing the witch to turn back toward her table to see Naruto standing there. Naruto! Phoebe exclaimed in surprise as the blonde took a seat. What are you doing here? She nervously asked, fidgeting a bit. A friend of mine knows the guy who owns this place. I'm here looking for prospects for him. But enough about that. I didn't expect to see you here. He looks at the poster. The amazing Phoebe, huh? Phoebe rubbed the back of her head in embarrassment. Well, you see. I have an old friend who's plenty clairvoyant. It's really an amazing gift. The power of foresight, retrocognition, psychometry, etc., is a powerful and overlooked gift. You seem to know a lot on the subject. What can you tell me? Phoebe asked, a curious look on her face. Well, in order to receive premonitions, initially you have to have contact with an object or person that will later be involved with said visions. Eventually, when you grow more powerful, you can remain lucid and don't have to touch objects. Also, one can send visions to another person as long as they're clairvoyant as well. How would you grow about controlling them? She decided, curious about what else she could expect about her power. It's really about practice. You can call of them, if you concentrate with a particular object or person. Though, it's more than just having visions of a nearby future. One can see into the past and future if they grow powerful enough. Like, for instance, if you were to take my hand and concentrate, you should have a vision. I don't know. I mean, I'm more of a novice. Psychic, a novice psychic. Well, it's just for fun, right? Here. Naruto pulled a crisp 100 from his wallet. I can't take this, she said, startled by Naruto's generous offer. Phoebe, relax, think of it as a loan from a friend. He held out his hand. You trust me, right? Okay. But Phoebe's eyes seemed to glaze as she had a vision. She saw herself. Prue and Piper were sitting on the bed in a room they didn't recognize. Naruto then walked in and sat in a chair opposite of them. Are you sure you three are ready? The three sisters shared a glance before nodding. The result will leave us in an unbreakable alliance. But very well, I won't question the decision anymore. From this day on, I welcome you three to the OB. Phoebe, you okay? Naruto asked, shaking her. Huh. In a bit of haze, Phoebe slowly came back. Yeah, what was that? So, what did you see? Phoebe said the first thing that came to her mind. Costume. A costume party. The images of the vision still fresh in her mind. This day forth. Huh. That's odd. I suppose I should go and get my costume then. Anyway, it was nice chatting with you. I have to go. Wait. How am I supposed to contact you? If I have any other questions. You know about premonitions? Huh. Let's see. Naruto went about patting his pants and shirt pocket. Ah. Here we go. He took a card out of shirt with his home address, email and cell phone number. I recently had my numbers changed, with me just moving here and all, and I'm still trying to remember that they're changed. Hey, maybe you can give me a tour around the city sometime, show me all the hot spots. Sounds fun. In that case, I'll see you later, Naruto said, flashing a smile and waving. Yeah, later. A small smile formed on Phoebe's face. Be careful of warlocks. She heard him called back as she raised an eyebrow. She didn't have long to contemplate as she heard one of her sisters call for her. Phoebe. Piper. Ha. I am so busted, aren't I? Phoebe laughed nervously. Piper was staring at her in disbelief. Are you out of your mind again? Piper demanded, causing Phoebe's smile to disappear. She quoted, pointing toward the sign that said exactly that. Number. I'm the amazing Phoebe. This is not funny. Our powers are supposed to be a secret, not a marketable job skill. Piper hissed at her, while looking around to make sure no one was in earshot. Relax. They didn't hire me because they think I'm a witch. They hired me because they think I'm a psychic. She whispered back. Hair splitting. You know you can't use your powers for personal gain. Not without consequences. No, but it's for Prue. It's not for me. It's to pay for her present. It's completely selfless. Besides, this is the last place anyone would expect to find a real psychic. Believe me. Mark Chow walks up to them. He was a young man, maybe in his mid-20s, Asian, short dark hair and a look of exasperation was on his face. Which one of you is the psychic? The man called out to them hastily. She is. Piper snapped in Phoebe's direction with disapproval. Oh, I am. Phoebe agreed, holding her hand up in the air. You can see me. Both of you. He asked them, first surprised then relieved. Of course we can see you. Now back off. Piper snapped once more. Oh, thank God. I've tried communicating with every psychic in the city. Why, you were my last chance. The manager walks up to them. Phoebe. What are you doing? You've got customers waiting. Frankie said impatiently, but Mark interrupts. Okay. Listen to me. You're the only ones who can help me. Excuse us. We're trying to have an argument here. Piper told Mark. Frankie turns to look who Piper's talking to, but sees no one there. He looks back at Piper. Who are you? He asked quickly and Phoebe forced a laugh. She's just leaving. Bye. Go. Now. Piper turns and leaves. Mark, not one to miss the opportunity, follows her out of the hotel. Wait a minute. I need your help. He pleaded. Piper didn't cast him another glance as she made her way outside. Yeah, talk to the psychic. Piper and Mark walk out of the hotel. Please, I'm begging you. I was murdered last night. I can prove it. He tried to desperately tell her as she continued to follow her down the street. Stop harassing me, buddy. Piper snapped, throwing her hand out pointedly and continuing to otherwise ignore him. Please, I'm desperate. You got to help me. Leave me alone, or I'll call the police. Can you believe this guy? She asks a random woman that was walking by. The woman walking by turns and sees Piper talking with no one. Piper continues to walk toward her car. All you have to do is come with me to Chinatown and see for yourself. All right. That's it. Look. Either back off or, look out. Piper shouts out a warning to Mark, but he doesn't see the bike rider riding toward him. The bike rider passes clear through Mark. He turns to look at Piper. Now do you believe me? Oh, my God. I can see you, but no one else can. She stated, finally realizing what the ghost had been trying to tell her. I'm dead. I'm a ghost. Prue finally arrived at Quake and began shifting through the busy crowds trying to find him. After a few minutes of searching, she spotted him with a woman relatively within her age range, with pretty long blonde hair. Prue walked through the busy crowd, searching the tables for Andy. She spotted him at the very back of the restaurant sitting with a woman who had to be around the same age as Prue. Prue glanced at them curiously but continued to advance until Andy looked up and saw her. So this little boy says to his girlfriend, he says, if you let me kiss you, I'll show you my brass belly button. The woman giggles. So he leans over and he gives her a kiss, right on the cheek. Andy leans forward and kisses the woman on her cheek. Prue walks up to the table interrupting them. Hi. Prue greeted a little awkwardly, glancing toward the woman and back at Andy. Prue. His greeting was a mixture of cheerfulness and surprise. I tried calling the station house for you and they said that you would probably be here. She explained and then glanced at the woman again. Hello. Hi. The woman greeted. Shortly after, an uncomfortable silence formed as Prue looked over at Andy, waiting for an introduction or some sort of explanation. He seemed to had caught on as he stood up to introduce them to each other. "Oh, Prue, this is Andy began, but the woman beat him to it. Susan Trudeau. Nice to meet you. Pleasure." She finished politely shaking Prue's hand. Prue's smile flickered a moment to a look of confusion and suspicion. "Trudeau. Sister?" Prue asked hopefully. "Number. Actually." Before Andy could finish, Susan beat him to the punch once more. "Wife. Ex-wife." Andy re-corrected anxiously as he watched Prue carefully. Prue forced a small smile before turning and walking abruptly away. With a moment's glance back at Susan, Andy followed Prue, trying to explain. "Prue, wait, I can explain," he called after her. "Don't bother," she angrily remarked as she continued her way out the door. She caught sight of a desert cart and used her power to move it in front of Andy's path. "No, it's not what you think. We're divorced," Andy insisted just before the desert trolley moved into his path, causing him to bump into it, sending both himself and the cakes crashing to the ground. He let out a deep sigh as he saw Prue exit the restaurant without a backward glance. In the streets of Chinatown, Piper was helping one recently murdered ghost. "Thanks for helping me. When you wouldn't leave my front doorstep, you didn't leave me much of a chance." Mark leads Piper into the alleyway where he was murdered. "Maybe this isn't such a good idea," Piper said, a bit hesitant as she glanced at the shadows nervously. "Please, I don't have much time. Somebody has to find my body before it's too late," Mark insisted to a reluctant Piper, who relented and followed. "Too late for what?" The nervousness in her voice came out more evident than she wanted to relent. Whatever could frighten a ghost, a being that was already dead, it was something to worry about. "It's a Chinese myth. At least I always thought it was a myth. It's called Da Hoi, when the gates of hell open." "We're almost there." "The gates of hell? I don't understand," Piper admitted, biting her lip slightly. "If the gatekeeper, Yama, captures my soul before my body's properly buried, he'll take me to hell. Forever." "But you said you were murdered. How can?" she started to ask when Mark interrupted. "Yama doesn't care about good or evil. He just wants souls. I should have listened to my mother." They reach the spot. Piper looks down and gasps. The body is burned to a crisp and not recognizable. "Is that you?" Piper whispered. Mark gave a slight nod to her question. At the far end of the alleyway, a white mist rises. Through the mist, an ancient Asian figure appears in costume, riding an armored horse and carrying a large staff. Mark turns and sees the figure galloping toward them. "Yama!" Mark exclaimed, taking step back. Piper spun around and jumped backwards in fear. "Yama?" she asked, beginning to panic. "Run!" Piper managed to order, waving her hands at him to try and get him to move. Mark shook his head sadly. "It's too late. You better go. Run." Piper waves her hands and freezes Yama. "What happened?" he asked simply, and Piper shifted from foot to foot uncertainly. "I'm a good witch, remember?" Piper answered softly. "But how?" "I don't know. I panic. I put up both hands and bad things tend to freeze." She explained quickly, her eyes still staring at Yama. "For how long?" Mark wondered aloud, and Piper reached toward him as if to pull him along. "Not very. Let's go," she ordered, and they ran hastily down the alley away from Yama. Just as they reached the end of the alley, Yama unfroze, his eyes glowing angrily. They both turn and run out of the alleyway. As soon as she disappears from sight, Yama unfreezes. He points his long staff and gallops down the alleyway and stops near the body. He turns his head, and in the blacked holes of his warrior's mask, his eyes glow eerily. During that time, Prue had arrived home, still hurt and upset by the little tidbit she had recently learned. She had arrived and wanted to take a nice soak to get her mind off things when the telephone rang. Upon answering it, she then learned that Piper in fact did plan a surprise party. Getting off the phone, her annoyance only elevated when it seemed like the universe was conspiring against her as the doorbell rang. "Look, Andy, go away. I don't want to," she started to say as she opened the door only to come face to face with Naruto. "Well, geez, Miss Hallowell, you could at least remember my name," the blonde said, feigning mock hurt. "Sorry. Thought you were someone else. What are doing here?" she asked, surprised that the blonde had shown up on her doorstep. "Piper called me. Apparently she has a ghost problem." "Ghost? As in spirits?" she skeptically asked. "You're a witch and you've met warlocks and a demon. As someone who can move things with their mind, should you really be skeptical?" She sighed, realizing she was not going to get that bath. "Come in," she said, closing the door behind the blonde as he walked in. "Did I tell you girls how nice this place is? It really is nice," he said, despite the fact he didn't look around like any newcomer or guest would. "Well, it's been in the family of generations. So what's up? You didn't seem so happy when you opened the door." "Problems. I just learned someone isn't who I thought he was," she said as she led the blonde into the kitchen. She then pulled out a carton of juice and poured herself a glass. "Oh. Man, problems. Let me guess, it's the cop, right? He's gay." Unfortunately, at that time Prue was taking a sip of her drink, and upon hearing that, Prue couldn't help but end up doing a spit take on Naruto. She covered her mouth as she couldn't stop herself from laughing. "Oh my god, I'm so sorry." She couldn't help herself. Andy. Gay. After what they did a couple of days ago, Prue had more wine than she thought, or Andy was a hell of an actor. "This was a nice shirt," he mumbled, looking down at the mess. "And it's on my pants too," he said with a sigh. "Good thing I'm wearing shorts underneath. Can I use your washer?" "Yeah, I'm really sorry," she said as the blonde took off his shirt. Let me go get you a towel," she said as she sat down the cup and went to the bathroom to get a towel. Naruto took off his shirt and tossed it on the table and began undoing his belt when Prue walked in with a towel. Let me take care of that," she said, picking up his shirt. "Thanks," he said as he started struggling with his belt. "Damn belt. I think I put a loop too tight. Need help?" Prue asked, sitting the shirt back on the table as Naruto nodded. "It'd be appreciated. Hey, I'm home, so how was Hua?" Phoebe had to do a double take at what she was seeing. "So, what's going on here?" From her point of view, it looked like Prue was trying to take off Naruto's pants. "Hey, Phoebe," Naruto greeted, seemingly unfazed by what was going on. "Nothing much. Prue was trying to help me get my pants off." And Naruto's comments really weren't helping the matter either. He really could be a bastard sometimes when it came to doing a joke. "No, it's not what it looks like. I got some of my juice on Naruto, so I was helping him out of his clothes." She paused, upon realizing how that sounded. "I mean, well, you know what I'm trying to say. I was trying to be nice." "Wow, sis, if that's nice, I wonder what you do for a guy when you really like him." Phoebe. Thankfully for Prue's sanity, Piper would only arrive later that evening, giving time for Naruto's clothes to wash and for him to get redressed while she at last got that nice hot relaxing bath she was craving. Though in hindsight she wished she hadn't told Phoebe the surprise party was off before she went to take a bath. Phoebe pounds on the bathroom door. "Prue, you can't do this. Piper's going to be crushed." She called desperately, only to turn around to find Piper, who glanced at her curiously. "I'm going to be crushed?" Piper asked uncertainly. Prue opens the bathroom door clad in a bath towel. "The surprise party is off," Prue explained icily. Piper feigned a look of ignorance. "What party?" she wondered aloud, looking toward Phoebe for help. Phoebe just shook her head in response. "She's on to you. The restaurant called while we were out," Phoebe replied, and Piper frowned, giving up at pretending she didn't know what they were talking about. "Oh. Is that why you were so upset earlier? Piper didn't think that a party would upset Prue that much. Let's just say it hasn't been a great day. The eldest responded cryptically. Does it have anything to do with why Andy's been calling all night? Phoebe interrogated. Prue was about to respond, but another voice drew their attention. Piper, where'd you say today's paper was? Mark steps into the hallway looking for Piper. He stops when he sees Prue. And what a sight he was seeing. Like any straight male, he couldn't help but state seeing a wet, almost naked, and attractive female before him. Hey, I'm practically naked here. Prue cried out indignantly as she tightened the towel around her form. He turns his head, but doesn't leave. Whoops. Sorry. He apologized rather unconvincingly. What's the drunk from the hotel doing here? Phoebe asked, momentarily forgetting her quest to convince Prue not to avoid the party. The name's Mark, and I'm not a drunk. He replied rather miffed. He's a ghost. Piper explained quickly, biting her lip. Prue's eyebrows rose. Excuse me. A what? Phoebe replied, wondering if she heard Piper right. A ghost. He was murdered, and he obviously needs our help. Why else would we be able to see him? Phoebe tries to use her jacket to cover Prue. Well, he can see us. That's for sure. Hey, of all the days to be a dead man. He muttered to himself. You sure this guy's really a ghost? Piper tosses the mug to Mark. It passes right through him and nearly hits Naruto as it smashes on the floor behind him. Hey, sorry. Piper sheepishly replied. The sisters, with addressed Prue and Naruto, joined together in the kitchen to discuss Mark's situation. So, how do we know that the guy doesn't really belong in hell? Phoebe asked, peeking over Piper's shoulder at Mark, who was attempting to touch anything. Because we can see him, so he's one of the innocent we have to protect. Protect from what? He's dead. Prue stated. Spirits who don't pass on can be feasted upon by a number of things. Soul devourers, dream eaters, and the likes. They normally stick to their particular gimmick, but there are the odd ones that seek out souls. Then the spirits can be captured and sold into slavery or be used as fuel for power or rituals. So in other words, the end result is usually eternal torment of being in someone's stomach or spending an eternity hunting places. It's really a miserable existence, as poltergeists can end up in various shapes and sizes in any place really. Either malevolent or benevolent, it's really for the best to help them move on. The blonde added his bit of knowledge. Wow. You really know a lot about this stuff. Piper complimented as Naruto nodded. I like to read. He responded with a simple shrug. Okay, so all we have to do is get Mark's family to give him the proper burial, and then he can move on to wherever it is he moves on to. Okay, so I'll call the police and let them know where the body is. Prue suggested simply. I already did. I just want to give them a little time to notify Mark's mom before I go and talk to her. Piper replied. Talk to her. And tell her what? That you're a witch in touch with the ghost of her dead son. The eldest sister once more replied with that skepticism of hers. I'm just going to try and get her to have a funeral as soon as possible before Yama gets Mark's spirit. The phone rings and Phoebe heads over to answer it. Hello. She turns away and lowers her voice. Oh, hi. I can't really talk right now. It's important. Okay, I'll be at the hotel in a little while. All right. Bye. She hangs up. That was my new boss calling. I got to run. Phoebe leaves the kitchen. Prue gets to her feet. Okay. So when you called the police, you didn't talk to Andy, did you? Prue wondered, getting up and pacing around the kitchen. She spun around to look at her sisters, uncertain of which answer she wanted. Piper glanced over at her and shook her head. No, it was anonymous. She answered. Why did you decide to not go away with him? She explained as Piper's eyes widened in surprise. His what? Piper demanded, receiving a nod from Prue. Yeah, I mean, you would think he would have remembered to reveal that little fact before we jumped in the sack. Prue commented, crossing her arms. Well, what did he say? Why didn't he tell you? Piper bombarded Prue and she avoided eye contact. I don't know, I didn't really hang around long enough to ask. She admitted. A food trolley got in his way. Prue replied carefully, and before Piper could respond, Mark popped his head through the door. Piper covers her eyes and sighs. Sorry. Mark retreats back through the door. You know. Don't these guys knock? They both shake their heads. At the Hotel Neptune bar it was night time. Frankie began filling Phoebe in on the client he wants her to read. Look, the guy's staying in the Grand Suite. He could be a sultan, I'm not sure. Anyway, that's why I called. Make this bozo's night. Read his future. Tell him something good, and he'll extend his stay. Guaranteed. Look, like I said, I don't always know when my psychic switch is going to be in the up position. I have the utmost confidence in you, Phoebe, baby. I don't know how you do it, but keep it up, and you'll always have work here. Phoebe smiles and turns and sees the man at the counter finish his drink, grab his things and leave. He forgets his wallet on the table. Oh, excuse me, sir. Why, you forgot your. Oh. Phoebe picks up the wallet and promptly has a premonition. The man walks out of the hotel. He walks down the front steps. As he crosses the street, he drops his briefcase. He leans forward to pick it up and a car approaches him from behind. The car horn blares. He turns and looks up, but it's too late. The car hits the man. You okay? What's the matter? He asked, a little worried. Phoebe looked down at the wallet in her hand. Nothing. She hesitates. Nothing. Phoebe looks down at the wallet in her hands. At the manor, one of the other's sister was also trying to solve the problem at hand. Mark sits in front of the television set. He tries to turn it on and watches as his finger passes clear through the set. It's a strange experience for him, to be dead. Piper walks into the room carrying a blanket. She pauses as she watches him. He turns and sees her. Still new to me, I keep forgetting I'm. He can't say it. He sees the blankets and stands up. Are those for me? Piper laughed a little awkwardly and bit her lip. Yeah, but, stupid question. Do ghosts sleep? She wondered nervously. I don't even get cold anymore. Mark answered stoically and Piper frowned slightly. Oh, sorry, she apologized, tossing them into the chair beside her. Oh, it's okay. It's the thought that counts. I guess, it's finally sinking in, what's really happened. What I've lost. No more sucking down a bucket of oysters at the wharf, playing pickup ball with friends, coming home and hearing my mother's voice on the machine nagging 'cause I haven't married a nice Chinese girl. Piper smiles as she hears the wistfulness in his voice. Your mom means a lot to you, huh? She's a great friend. Was. Mark sits down. It was just me and her after my father died. Taught me everything I know. Especially how to cook. Mom's a great cook. Single quote. My Grams taught me how to cook. Actually, I loved it so much I became a chef. Really? Ever make a Peking duck? He wondered and Piper shook her head. No, have you? It's a piece of cake. Mark laughed and Piper joined in. Mom told me I could have been a great chef if I hadn't sold out to the molecular biology program at Stanford. So you can make Peking duck and clone DNA, Piper joked. The duck's harder. Mark countered and they both laughed pleasantly. Piper took a few more steps forward and sat down next him on the couch. Well, I can talk about food all night long, she told him, making herself comfortable on the couch. Yeah, well, I can talk about it forever, Mark retorted, starting to laugh again. Piper quickly joined in, turning to face him on the couch. Meanwhile, back at the Hotel Neptune, Phoebe was pacing back and forth, waiting for Mr. Corey to show up. He turns into the hallway and stops in front of his door. Oh, Mr. Corey, thank goodness. I need to talk to you, Phoebe said, her tone filled with urgency. You do? Mr. Corey asked, turning to glance over his shoulder to see if there was anyone else behind him. Yeah, Phoebe admitted quickly, only to have him cut her off. Me? Oh, hey, you're that psychic, right? He asked with mock amusement. Yeah, right, look. Before she could finish, he interrupted with another question. Is that how you knew my name? No. Phoebe was used to people dismissing her as loony during her lounge psychic routine. But right now, saving a life was more important than her pride. Yes. Did you get the note that I left for you? She finally asked after stumbling over a response to the man's question. That note warning me not to go outside. That was you? He asked, surprised, then told her, you get your jollies out of trying to scare people, or is that how you drum up business? He asked, visibly irritated. He then turns to go into his room. What? You don't understand. The door opens and Mrs. Corey steps out into the hallway. Honey, where do you want to eat? Hi. What's she doing here? Mrs. Corey wondered, pointing an accusatory finger at Phoebe, who just rolled her eyes. Mr. Corey never took his eyes off of Phoebe and just responded. She sent the note. Mrs. Corey's eyes widened and the look she shot Phoebe mirrored her husband's. Phoebe shook her head slightly and pulled out his wallet so he could see it. It's not what you think. Look, when I picked up your wallet, she began to explain, but Mr. Corey didn't wait for an explanation. You stole my wallet. He immediately accused her as he snatched the wallet from her hand. I didn't steal your wallet. Phoebe snapped indignantly, throwing her hands up dramatically. Mr. Corey sent her a glare as he folded his wallet up and placed it back in his pocket. The elevator bell rang and Mrs. Corey took a step toward it, though her eyes never left Phoebe. I don't know what you want, but just stay away from us. You understand. The Coreys turn to leave. But he's going to die. They step into the elevator only to stop and turn to stare at her because of the threatening accusation. That didn't come out right. The elevator door starts to close. Phoebe puts a hand out and stops it. Ooh, look, I can't tell you how I know this, but, I swear, if you go outside you're going to get run over by a pink. Wait. You don't have your briefcase. That's good. That's really good. It doesn't happen without your briefcase. Leave us alone, or I'm going to call hotel security. Nick Corey pushes the elevator door button and the doors close on Phoebe. At the Buckland auction house, Prue opens her officer door and enters only to find a bouquet of flowers on her desk. She pushes the door behind her and walks into the office. Standing behind the door near the wall is Andy, whom Prue hadn't seen yet. She leans in and smells the flowers. Andy pushes the door closed. Hi. Andy greeted softly, taking a few cautious steps toward her. Prue hit the card against her palm for no other reason but to have something to do with her hands as she continued to avoid his eyes. You of all people should know bribery is a crime. She told him, and Andy approached her, only stopping once he was right in front of her. Apologizing isn't, is it? He asked. Look, Prue, I'm sorry I didn't tell you I was married before. I should have. I was going to. He continued, hating that he had kept it silent. He didn't really know why he hadn't told her. Maybe it was because he didn't want her to take it the wrong way. To doubt him, to doubt herself. Now, however, he'd give so much to have told her before now. To save her the pain he knew she was feeling, though she hid it as best she could. Really? When? Prue demanded quietly, so he wouldn't be able to hear her voice crack slightly. Before or after the doors to our adjoining rooms swung open this weekend? She asked, knowing that was the result of the weekend away. Okay. I deserved that. Andy admitted, giving a slight nod. Before he could say any more, Prue continued. I don't understand how you couldn't have found the time to tell me. Unless you really were trying to hide it from me. Andy sighed, appearing a little mad that she thought him so low. Come on, Prue. You know me better than that. he countered, taking his hands out of his pockets and leaning against her desk. Do I? Prue, it was an innocent dinner. That's all. I've got an ex-wife and I don't hate her. Is that so horrible? Andy asked in slight frustration. He was careful to keep his voice under control so as not to start a full-fledged argument between them. After all, this was pretty much his fault and he knew it. No, it's not. But not being honest, not telling me up front is. Prue whispered, the hurt evident in her voice. Which I've already apologized for. Andy replied, not knowing what more he could say. He looked into her eyes and saw not only the hurt he expected but also conflict. Why are you trying to turn this into something it's not? What's really bugging you, Prue? He asked, leaning across her desk toward her. Prue stayed silent though she wanted so much just to tell him. Looks like I'm not the only one trying to hide a secret. Andy pulled away and left hastily. Prue watched him go and her chance to open up disappeared when the door closed behind him. Elsewhere on a roof somewhere Naruto stood as he looked down as the middle school students exited the building. As he waited until the Jenkins girl was in sight, a portal opened behind him. Out stepped a red head with emerald eyes and a strong magical aura. I hope I didn't disturb you, he said as the red head joined him. There wasn't much to disturb. So about this girl. I've been keeping tabs on numerous people. This girl, however, has the makings for a vast amount of power. Her sister was kidnapped by demons 7 years ago, and for that reason the girl is heavily investing her time in magic in hopes of finding her. So you want me to train her? This brand of magic is far different from your own. While I hope you become the girl's mentor of sorts, I think it'll be better if I can sway a local high-level witch to train the girl. The woman began to stretch as her loosely buttoned black sweater rose a bit. I'll see what I can do. I knew I could count on you, Gwen. Elsewhere, Piper and Mark arrive at the Chow residence. Piper walks up the porch and rings the bell. She turns to Mark. If you speak her language, then she'll trust you. Can I help you? Mrs. Chow asked politely. Hello, my name is Piper. Mark said in Chinese. Piper's eyes flickered nervously toward him before she said the same syllables. She really had no idea what she was saying. Mrs. Chow nodded in understanding and Piper continued to say what Mark told her. I need to talk to you. You speak Chinese? Mrs. Chow wondered, speaking Chinese, and Piper glanced worriedly at Mark. Mrs. Chow, following her eyes, looked right at Mark but saw nothing. Mark thought about it for a moment before answering. Berlitz, it's about Mark. You know where he is? She pleaded, taking Piper's hands hopefully. Mark looked confused for a moment. She asked if you know where I am. Mark told the sisters and both looked surprised. Wait, you don't. Piper responded to the woman in English. No, and I'm worried sick. I haven't heard from him since his birthday. Mrs. Chow responded in English. The police haven't notified her yet. Mark wondered aloud. How's that possible? I mean that he hasn't called. Piper replied uncertainly. I don't know. It's not like him. When did you last see him? Mrs. Chow asked and Piper bit her lip, flustered. Well, she began carefully, trying to work up the courage to tell Mrs. Chow about him. Piper, you have to tell her. You have to tell her where my body is so she can bury me. Mark insisted and Piper gave a slight shake of her head. I can't, Piper whispered to him, only to quickly remembering that Mrs. Chow was watching her closely, hanging on her every word. I can't remember the last time actually, but if I see him or hear from him I'll let you know. She promised awkwardly. Piper turns and walks down the front steps. Thank you. Thank you. Mark stops her. You can't walk away, Piper. You have to tell her. Mrs. Chow turns and heads back inside the house. Desperate, he chases after her. Mom. No. He runs up the steps and heads for the front door. He's immediately stopped by a force shield. He falls back to the ground. The eyes of the lion amulet hanging on the nail on the door frame glows and fades. What happened? She's got the house protected against ghosts. All the Chinese fairy tales she told me growing up are true, and I'm going to burn in hell. Back at the manor, Prue was currently scrubbing the stove. Phoebe walks into the kitchen. Man, trouble. Phoebe guessed, sounding dejected as she just stood and watched her eldest sister. I don't want to talk about it. By the way, where were you last night? Prue responded, not looking up to meet Phoebe's gaze but continuing to scrub. She did glance up as Phoebe walked past her toward the cabinets. By the way, where were you last night? Phoebe ignored the question and grabbed a pair of yellow gloves and walked back to Prue, where she hastily pulled them on. Prue tilted her head in confusion. Something wrong? She asked, the worry for her younger sister shining through. I don't want to talk about it. Phoebe puts the gloves on. Okay, you never clean, and you'll talk about anything. What's up? Prue probed gently. Nothing. Phoebe snapped and began scrubbing furiously. Prue reached out and grabbed her hand, halting her in her cleaning. Phoebe. She pleaded, and Phoebe threw the scrubber down, giving up. She knew there was no way to get out of telling Prue now. Okay. I had a premonition, a really bad one too. I saw a guy getting run over by a pink Cadillac. Phoebe confided. Prue pulled away as her little sister began to speak but still listened intently. A pink Cadillac. Prue echoed in disbelief, raising her eyebrows. If the situation hadn't been so serious, she probably would have laughed. Phoebe turned away, throwing her hands up desperately. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. I saw it and I don't know what to do about it. Phoebe insisted, walking over to the sink to clean off the scrubber. Her eyes flickered to Prue, hoping for a little advice. Well, did you warn him? Prue asked, the obvious suggestion, and Phoebe rolled her eyes. I tried. He thought I was out of my mind, thought I was stalking him or something. I mean, how do you tell a complete stranger that you know they're going to die? Phoebe replied, and was met by a few moments of silence as Prue thought the situation over. Where is he now? She demanded, and Phoebe tensed at the expected question. She bit her lip and answered in a small voice. After a sigh, Phoebe responds. The Hotel Neptune. Oh, what were you doing there? The place was way too pricey considering Phoebe didn't have a job. I knew you were going to ask that. I wanted to get you a really great birthday present to make up for all those cards, so I got a job at the hotel as their lounge psychic. Go ahead. Yell at me. Phoebe, you have to save him. You can't let him out of your sight. Prue answered instead, and Phoebe gave a slight nod. Oh, don't worry. I waited until he went to sleep, and then I broke a key off in his door to lock him in. He's safe till morning. Single quote. Phoebe waits for the rest, but Prue returns to scrubbing the stove. Hey, wait. That's it. The younger sister asked, confused. You're not going to get mad at me. You were trying to do something good, and now you're going to get to do something wonderful. I couldn't ask for a better birthday present than that. Piper and Mark walk into the kitchen. You guys have to see this. Piper announced, reaching for the remote that was kept in the kitchen and flipping the small television on. Prue and Phoebe exchanged a glance before turning to watch the television closely. They found my body, Mark explained for their benefit. Although police reported that the body was burned beyond recognition. It's finally over. Personal effects found at the scene preliminarily identify him as Tony Wong, head of the Chinatown Triads. Hey, that can't be. That's the guy who killed me. Mark commented in relief as the reporter continued. Single quote. Wong, who was a suspect in 2 gang-related slayings last year. Phoebe gets a premonition. Tony sits in his office. Behind him is a sign with 2 Chinese characters on it. Tony stands up and leaves. The premonition lingers on the sign. Oh, no, wait, I see him. Wong. He's still alive, Phoebe announced, keeping her eyes closed to keep the premonition going to memorize as much about the scene as she could. Of course he's still alive. That's me they found. Mark insisted, pointing again at the screen where the crime scene was once again visible. Can you see where he is now? Prue asked quickly, leaning closer to Phoebe. She was silent a moment as she studied the background for evidence of a location. I see a sign. Quick, give me a pen. Phoebe answered hastily, glancing at Piper, who turned to pull a pen out of the drawer behind her. Piper gets a pen out of the drawer. I don't understand why Wong would want to kill me. I never did anything to him. I don't understand why Wong would want to kill me. I never did anything to him. Mark lamented, ignoring the sister moment, his eyes never leaving the television screen. You do look kind of like him. Piper pointed out with a shrug as she looked from the television to Mark and back again, comparing the faces. Prue nodded in agreement to Piper's observation. Maybe he used you to fake his own death. She writes the characters on the palm of her hand and shows it to Mark. What does that mean? She asked, recognizing the symbols as Chinese words. Mark read it quickly. Warhai Imports. Mark read and Piper glanced up. The warehouse in Chinatown. Piper wondered, glancing at Mark, who gave her a slight nod. Arriving at Wuhan Imports, Chinatown, Piper and Mark walk into the office. I don't know about this, Piper. I think it's too dangerous. It's your only chance. Piper and Mark make their way up the stairs to the second-floor office. Piper, listen to me. You don't want to go up there. Those men pulled the trigger on me without even thinking. They'll kill you. I can freeze things, remember? She snapped. But there are 3 thugs in there. Mark added. Keep talking. Piper replied shortly. Mark threw his hands up in the air. With guns. He tried again. Even better. Piper offered in a falsely chipper voice. Wait. He's got an amulet on the door. I can't go in. He pointed out. Piper looked at it for a split moment before leaning forward, unhooking it, and tossing it to the ground. She turned and looked at him pointedly, his former smile now gone. Never mind. Mark finally gave in and the sisters exchanged a glance and a determined nod. Aren't you scared? He asked in disbelief. Terrified. Trust me, that's a good thing. Taking a breath, Piper rushes into the office. The door bursts open and Piper runs into the office. The 4 men in the office turn around. Tony Wong holds out his, sees them and gasps, and on instinct she froze them. Okay. Phew. We got to hurry. Piper puts the newspaper on Tony Wong's open hands. The headline reads, Tony Wong found dead. She steps back and holds up the camera. Say cheese. She snaps the photo and everyone unfreezes. She sees them move, screams, turns and runs out of the office. Run. Tony looks down at the newspaper in his hands. Come on. One thug said. Let's get her. Another suggested. The 4 of them run out of the office after Piper. Piper runs for her car. She gets in and starts the engine. Tony Wong and his thugs step out into the street. They point their guns at Piper's retreating car, license number 3B583Y8, as they wave the bystanders away. Move. As she drives away, Tony Wong writes down her license number. Piper exits the police department after sneaking the photograph into Andy's interoffice mail. Okay, all set. I snuck the photograph into Andy's interoffice mail. My afterlife's in the hands of a cop named Andy. He's an inspector, and he's very good, Mark. After he sees Wong is alive, he'll know exactly what to do. Bust Wong maybe, but that doesn't help me. They won't have any way of identifying the body as mine. I put your name in with the picture. Andy will get dental records or something and match it up. All we have to do is keep Yama away from you until then. I don't know what to say. Piper opens the door for Mark. Don't say anything. I made you a promise, didn't I? Single quote. On the other side of the parking lot, Andy gets out of his car. He takes a sip from his coffee cup, turns and sees Piper standing by her open car door. He makes his way toward her. As much as I like you, I have no intention of joining you. Talking to yourself, huh? Andy called teasingly as he approached. Piper's eyes widened in surprise and Andy could have laughed at her expression of bewilderment. She bit her lips slightly and quickly slammed the door shut and smiled awkwardly at him. Andy, hi, she replied, shifting from foot to foot. Yeah, it's an old habit of mine. I do it all the time. It drives Prue crazy, she added, hoping it sounded believable. It apparently did, as Andy seemed to believe her. My mom used to call it interesting conversations with an interesting person. He explained while Mark listened to the conversation, amused at Piper's cover-up. Yeah, interesting. Piper agreed with a short laugh. Very. Mark added, receiving a glare in his direction from Piper, who was trying to appear nonchalant. Andy glanced around her for a moment before looking back at her. He seemed to be having a silent debate. Not that it's not a pleasure, but what are you doing here? He wondered. Oh, nothing. You know, just passing by. She answered, with a wave of her hand toward the road, again trying to keep at ease. Andy glanced down at his cup before asking what he had really wanted to say. Prue tell you what was going on? He asked, almost positive she had. Piper's smile fell slightly, not entirely sure if she should say yes. Prue could get upset about that. No, Piper lied, pausing for a moment. She couldn't just leave Andy like that. Besides, she wanted them to stay together. Well, yeah, she quickly changed her mind. Andy looked at her silently for a moment and Piper added. Kind of screwed up. Huh. Any idea what I should do? Oh, that Andy. Mark suddenly realized. Yeah, she replied automatically to Mark before she could stop herself. Andy turns and looks at who Piper's talking to and he doesn't see anyone. Piper tries to cover. I mean, yeah, just give her some space. Let her work it through. She shrugs. Yeah, okay. He gives Piper a hug. Thanks. Take care. Andy turns and leaves. You, too. Piper turns and sees Mark smiling at her. What? You're really a sweet person, you know that. No, I mean that. I want to take you somewhere. Something I wanna do for you. Piper glances around again, opens the car door and motions Mark to get into the car. He slips into the car and she shuts the door. Back at the Hotel Neptune, Phoebe tries once more to save Nick Corey. The elevator door dings, the doors open and Nick Corey steps out into the lobby. Phoebe intercepts him. Oh, Mr. Corey, she called at once, jumping in front of him to block his path. Mr. Corey's eyes snapped up to look at Phoebe. Stay away, he snapped in return. He roughly pushed Phoebe to the side and held his other hand out in front of him as if to ward her away from him. Mr. Corey sped up his walk as he headed for the front doors of the hotel. Please. You have got to believe me. Phoebe insisted, trailing after him. Mr. Corey kept walking, but he glanced over his shoulder at Phoebe. You locked me in my room, didn't you? He accused. Yeah, but just for your own protection, she tried, offering an innocent smile and a shrug. It was worth a shot. It worked on her sisters most of the time. However, Mr. Corey just looked away in disgust. What do you want? Money. Is this what this is? A shakedown? Mr. Corey asked, his voice now dripping with frustration. Phoebe equally frustrated threw her hands in the air as she stomped after him. No, I am trying to save your life, for God's sake, listen to me. She shouted as they reached the front doors. Mr. Corey stopped just inside them and pointed an accusatory finger her way, and Phoebe stopped abruptly. You're crazy. Mr. Corey concluded, turning to leave as Phoebe saw a flash of her premonition. Mr. Corey getting hit by the car. In desperation, Phoebe pointed back at him. If you walk out that door, you're a dead man. She insisted and then fell silent as she realized exactly how wrong that came out. Mr. Corey ignored her and got the attention of the door greeter who was on the phone. "Call security," he ordered, pointing at Phoebe before heading out the doors. "Mr. Corey, don't do it," Phoebe yelled, before taking off after him. Mr. Corey stopped just outside the door and glanced back down at his watch before taking to the steps. Phoebe slipped through the closing doors and ran after him. "Wait. Watch out," she shouted as Mr. Corey dropped his briefcase in the road, just like in her premonition. She glanced over and saw the pink Cadillac driving toward him and rushed down to help. The horn of the car blared and Phoebe leapt at him, tackling him safely to the ground. Phoebe quickly picked herself up off the ground as Mrs. Corey ran up to her husband, looking panicked. "That'll be $20. Tip not included," Phoebe snapped, turning to leave the Coreys watching her in confusion. Night soon struck San Francisco, at which Piper arrived at Mark's place and opened the door. She then turns on the light and took a gander around. "This is your place?" she softly asked as she looked around. "It's beautiful. Thanks." She picks up a book on the desk. "Camus. I'm impressed," she remarked, holding it up for him to see. Mark smiled slightly and turned to regard her curiously. "Wish I had a chance to finish it. Of course, I could say that about almost everything, I guess. I love this world as a dead world, and always there comes an hour where one is weary of prisons, and all one craves for is a warm face, the warmth and wonder of the living heart." Piper read from the book. "I like that part," he admitted. "Me too," she agreed, continuing to flip through the book. She stopped when Mark reached his hand out toward the book, as if to bring her attention back to him. "Listen, if your cop friend comes through, maybe I'll get a chance to ask Camus himself how it turns out." Mark offered as a form of a joke before walking around her and pointing up at the top of his bookshelf. "I want you to reach for something," he told her. Piper immediately noticed the little black box on the top of the shelf and went to get it. Mark walked away to the couch and Piper joined him a few moments later. "Go ahead, open it," he allowed as Piper sat down next to him and obeyed. She gently pulled out several thin pieces of paper and looked at them uncertainly. "What are they?" she wondered and glanced over at him for an explanation. "My grandfather's recipes. My dad translated them when I was born. They've been serving them in my family's restaurant for decades. They're yours," Mark told her simply. At the unexpected request, Piper's eyes widened slightly in surprise. "But they belong in your family," Piper began in protest, but Mark cut her off. "I want you to have them. For everything you've done for me. I just ask one favor. Use them at your sister's birthday party. From what I've seen, Phoebe needs a little help with the planning," Mark requested, laughing a little at the end. The comment about her little sisters allowed Piper a short smile as she gave a slight nod in agreement. "Prue doesn't want a party." Piper disagreed, the smile fading as she looked back down at the recipes in her hand. "Birthdays are important. I know. I walked out of my last one and it never occurred to me that I wouldn't get another. She may not know it, but she needs to celebrate her birthday. We all do. Don't take it for granted," Mark advised. At the Hallowell Manor, Prue was currently resided in her bedroom, flipping through the television channels. Phoebe opens the door and walks into the room. "Prue, what are you doing?" "Just flicking through channels," Prue replied absent-mindedly with a shrug. "You don't flick, you never flick," Phoebe countered, sounding a little worried for her eldest sister. Prue just smiled slightly and her eyes flickered to look at her little sister. "Well, I flick now," she stated, a hint of humor in her voice. Her eyes narrowed upon studying Phoebe for a few moments. "Are you okay? You look," Prue trailed off. "Awful," Phoebe suggested with a smile. She unconsciously ran a hand slowly through her disheveled hair. "I know, but I feel fine," she insisted. Prue's eyes suddenly lit up as she remembered Phoebe's premonition problem. "Did you warn that guy?" Prue wondered aloud. I did better than that. I saved that guy. Phoebe responded, causing her older sister to break into a smile. And it was great. I knew doing it would be good for him, but I had no idea what a rush it would be for me. It felt so good, and not just about myself, but about everything. That even in my own little way I could make a difference. She continued to ramble while Prue listened silently. Phoebe's smile widened as she realized exactly how she sounded just then. Can you believe it's me saying this? She laughed, and Prue couldn't stop herself from joining in. What more can I say? It's been a week full of surprises. Prue agreed, thinking of everything that had been going on lately. Phoebe's smile faded and she looked down at her hands, trying to decide whether to bring up Andy or not. Yeah, speaking of surprises, what are you going to do about Andy? Phoebe asked, deciding Prue needed to talk about it. Prue sighed softly, her smile fading as well. I don't know. Andy kept something from me, but the truth is I keep something from him every day. And it's not like I'll ever be able to tell him our secret, so what's the point? She confessed. Phoebe shook her head slowly and immediately jumped to respond in a more positive light. We're the charmed ones, Prue, not the doomed ones. We have lives like everyone else. Call him. Go see him. Do something. Give to get. That is the secret of life, not our powers. Downstairs, the front door of the mansion opens as Piper and Mark walk into the house. Piper closes the door. Mark is thoughtfully quiet. You okay? Yeah, I was just thinking. In walking under the stars, what's really up there? What's waiting for me? I don't know. Maybe you can give me a hint when you get there. I don't want this night to ever end. I'm not ready to say goodbye, Piper. Piper feels the same way. She places her palm about an inch away from his cheek as if to touch him. Close your eyes. Pretend you can feel my hand on your skin, that my touch gives you comfort. No, just close your eyes. He automatically leans forward, she reaches up, and their lips almost touch in a pretend kiss. Piper and Mark pull away from each other. Where were you my whole life? Piper chuckles in response to the question. The front door bursts open and Piper screams as two of Tony Wong's thugs grab Piper. No, Piper. He cried out as he tried in futile to do something to slow them down. The two thugs say something in Chinese as they pick Piper and attempted to carry her out the door when something impacted their faces, sending them flying back. Piper, startled and her hair disheveled, looked up at her savior. We were wondering where you ran off to. Sorry, I was investigating where the murder went down. You all right? He asked as he continued to hold the middle sister in his arms, bridal style. Yeah, all live. Just a fright, that's all. She explained as it was a sudden fright, that's all. Prue and Phoebe ran down the stairs. What's wrong? What happened? And why is Piper in Naruto's arms? Unfortunately, the words didn't seem to want to come out of either of their mouths to form an explanation. Wow, first Prue and now Piper. So when am I going to get a little action? Phoebe asked with a mischievous smirk. Phoebe. Prue snapped in annoyance. She really wished her younger sister stopped insinuating something was going on between her and Naruto. Wong's men tried to take Piper. Mark finally explained as Naruto set her down. Ooh. Phoebe let out upon finally seeing the unconscious men. They know where we live. What do? We track the man down and get Wong and all his men arrested for one. And I know just how to do it. We're going to give Wong what he came for, but on our terms. Okay, back up. You want to let the murderous gangster get his hands on my sister. Trust me, Prue. No harm will come to her. You and Phoebe will be there to see to that. It's a little something I like to call a henge. Sometime later at Wuhan Imports, Piper found herself tied up in her chair while Tony Wong sits at his desk filling his gun with bullets. She really hoped that Naruto knew what he was doing. The first time I saw you, I thought you were a ghost. You know, These ropes are really tight. If you could just untie my hands. Tony Wong snaps the gun back into place and stands up. Why did you kill Mark? I needed his identity. He grabs a handful of Piper's hair and pulls back. She grunts. Who else knows I'm alive? Single quote, single quote. She doesn't say anything. He walks around Piper. I had plans. I had a boat ready to take me to Hong Kong. I had a whole new life, but you screwed it all up. At that same time at the police department, Andy was sitting at his desk. He picks up the case file folder. The mail person puts the interoffice mail on his desk. Thanks. Andy picks up the phone to make a call. As he goes through the file folder, he absently picks up the envelope in his in tray. He opens it and finds the photo of Tony Wong with the newspaper. Andy puts the phone down as he stares at the photo. Meanwhile, back at Wuhan Import, Mark and Naruto enters the building. I hope you know what you're doing. Trust me, I got this. Like my brother with a liquor bottle, he said as two thugs ran towards them. Tony could hear the commotion downstairs. I'll take her. You shoot anyone who comes through that door. He unties Piper as his thugs run to the door with the exception of two of them. Are you two deaf or something? I said get ready. The two thugs share a glance as one of them turned to Wong and he was sent flying into the wall. Before the thugs could turn and fire, the door was kicked off the hinges, slamming into them and sending them crashing into the ground unconscious. Tony got up, took aim at Prue and fired his gun. Look out. Piper waves her hands and freezes the bullet midair. Prue gasps. Thanks, sis. Prue and Phoebe rush over to free Piper. Right back at you, sis. How long does this last again? Not very. Time resumes. The bullet continues and hits the vase near the wall. Tony turns around and is startled when he finds them behind him. Who are you people? He demanded, backing away from them toward the door. Prue uses her power and pushes Tony out the door. That's for trying to hurt my sister, you scum. Tony Wong falls out the door and down the stairs. He lands on the floor. In the background, sirens could be heard approaching. Tony scrambles to his feet and runs out the front door. Andy and a couple of police cars stop in front of the imports building just as Tony Wong runs out the front door. They take up position behind their open car doors, their guns on Tony Wong. Police. Freeze. One officer shouted at him. Andy knelt behind his car door with his gun pointed at Tony. Wong made a move to shoot at Andy, but Andy was the quicker, shooting him down first. Andy stands up and keeps his gun on Tony. He then sees a tape recorder sticking out of Wong's shirt. Why did you kill Mark? I needed his identity. A female grunt could be heard. Who else knows I'm alive? Single quote, single quote. No response was given. All that could be heard was the sound of footsteps. I had plans. I had a boat ready to take me to Hong Kong. I had a whole new life, but you screwed it all up. You officer. I want an investigation into any civilians by the name of Mark that have gone missing within the 48-hour time frame that Wong was reported dead. From the second-floor balcony, Naruto, Piper, Phoebe, Prue and Mark look down at Tony's body on the road. I've never seen anybody killed before. Jeremy. Prue pointed out. Javna. Phoebe added. Too many to count. Naruto contributed with a shrug. I mean humans. Piper mutters in response to her companion's smart-ass comments. Come on. We need to get out of here before Andy sees us. Prue stated as they turn and leave the balcony. Meanwhile, down below, Tony Wong's spirit leaves his body. He stands up, turns around and looks back at his body still on the road. Shocked at seeing himself dead, he backs away and heads for the alley. Andy and the other officers cautiously approach the body on the road. In the alleyway, Piper, Prue, Phoebe and Mark head down the back fire escape and into the alley. As they run out the back of the alley, Mark sees Tony Wong running into the alley. Wong, Mark breathed. Tony Wong stared at them uncertainly. But You're dead, Tony pointed out, not understanding what was going on. Yeah, so are you, Mark countered. Behind Tony, Yama appeared in a swirl of fog. Mark, I think you should get out of here, Piper suggested hastily, grabbing onto Prue's arm in fear. Tony tried to back away from Yama, but Mark grabbed hold of him and threw him against the alley wall. Make a wish, bastard, Mark hissed and tossed him into Yama's lance. Tony screamed as his spirit was sucked into the point of the lance. Mark took a few steps back as the lance turned to him. Yama then turns and points his spear at Mark. Now. You are next. The ghostly incarnation's intent was obvious from his very eyes, which were glowing. Piper shouts and stands in between Mark and Yama. No, you can't take him. He's a good man. He doesn't belong with you, Piper shouted at the demon. Yama's eyes glow green. Prue and Phoebe step up and flank Piper. The three of them stands between Yama and Mark. Yama's eyes continue to glow as he moves a bit closer to them. It appeared he was silently thinking it over. You know full and well you can't harm them, Yama, Naruto said, stepping forward. They are the charmed ones. You have to uphold the balance like all the others. So unless you want to anger the higher beings, you might want to think about your options. Yama's eyes shortly after stopped glowing. He lifts his spear up and vanishes in a golden haze. A week later, the sisters found themselves attending Mark's funeral. Let us remember, though we gather in sorrow, we are here to celebrate the joy of Mark's life, and the redemption of his spiritual journey. Let us take a moment of silence. Mark stands on the side and watches his mother grieve. All those stories, all those legends you taught me, you saved my soul, Mom, he whispered, his voice cracking as he saw her pain. Mark slowly approached the Hallowell sisters, his gaze focusing on Prue first. Take it from me, Prue. Don't miss your birthday. Not any of them, they're precious, he advised, and Prue offered him a watery smile. I won't, she promised. Mark turned away from her and his eyes focused on Piper. Her brown eyes brimmed with tears. I wished, he began, but trailed off. There were no words to explain what he wanted to say, but Piper didn't need him to explain. I know. Me too, Piper agreed softly. Mark reached his hand out to touch her face, stopping just before her while she closed her eyes tightly. He slowly pulled away. I'm going to miss you, Piper. Piper smiled sadly as another man materialized in at the back of the ceremony. Piper smiles at him through her tears. On the other side of the grass, the ghostly figure of an older Asian man materializes. Phoebe sees him. Who's that man? Mark turns around and smiles. That's my dad. I guess this really is goodbye, Mark replied with mixed emotions. Phoebe offered him a quick wave as he turned around and approached his father. The two embraced and vanished away. Piper nods. Phoebe waves. Mark heads over to the man waiting for him. When he reaches him, they put their arms around each other's shoulders. They turn and continue walking. They vanish mid-stride. Piper takes a shuddering breath. Phoebe puts her arms around Piper. Leave it to me to fall for a dead guy, she said with a half laugh, half cry. Prue reaches over and holds onto Piper's hand. It's an improvement. At least he wasn't a warlock. Yeah, Piper agreed wholeheartedly. The front door of the manor opens. The sisters enter it, just leaving the funeral. You know what? I've changed my mind. Maybe I should have a party after all. Prue spoke up as she hung up their jackets next to the door. She cast a sly look at Piper that was missed by the youngest Hallowell. Phoebe glanced back at her eldest sister curiously. Are you serious? She asked uncertainly. Prue gave a confident nod in response. Yeah, why not? I mean, Mark is right, Prue decided. Piper puts her arm around Prue's shoulders and gently leads her over to the living room. Well, Prue, I'm glad you said that, 'cause. They turn the corner and find the room filled with guests and decorated for a birthday party. Surprise! Numerous guests cried out as they began to clap. Did I get ya? I got ya, Piper asked, then stated a bit smugly. Yeah, you got me. She agreed. Phoebe holds out the gaily wrapped birthday present. And an actual birthday gift that's paid for. I hope you like it. Prue takes the box and gives Phoebe a hug. I'm speechless. Happy birthday. Piper, though, still had her mind on the past few days' event. She was brought out of her silence when a voice said, "Champagne." She turned and met face to face with Naruto. Hey Piper. Naruto. She said, taking the glass and saying a quick thank you. Yeah, hope I'm not intruding. Phoebe sent me an invitation and I didn't have anything else to do at the moment. He said a bit sheepishly as he rubbed the back of his head. No, it's okay. So where are you from exactly? You never specifically told us. Well, you can say I was born in Japan, but as you can see I have a mixed heritage. Asian, some islander, a bit American, and Lord know what else. He added with a grin as Piper chuckles. I'm just seeking employment. I don't know about being hired. Figured that'd be the kind of thing you would know, watcher. Like I said, I do value your and others' privacy. I'm just mainly around if I sense evil in the area. Anyway, restaurants at North Beach are known for their quality, most of them. If you're hired, I look forward of tasting one of your recipes. If not, then it's the Quake's lost. You have that look about you that says cook. He stated as Piper looked at him with curiosity. And how can you tell that? Naruto grinned and said, I'm a cook in my own right. I don't specialize in anything in particular, but I've dabbled into anything I can. I've been making food for years. One of the things I do is form a group of talented cooks to sample each other's food and try to refine our techniques. That sounds interesting, but lately I've been finding myself busy to say the least. Naruto shrugged his shoulders, just come when you can. No pressure. I can bring you a sample of a slice of my strawberry cheesecake. Naruto's cell phone begins to ring. Sorry, I have to take this. Maybe I'll see you around sometime, Miss Hallowell, the blonde said as he stepped out of the room to answer his call. Piper watched as the mysterious blonde stepped away and took a sip from her glass. Maybe her luck wasn't so terrible after all. And now that she thought about it, she really had a thing for blondes anyway. Later that night, Prue had finally went to her room after the party and was ready to turn in. Though what caught her interest was the rather large oak box on the dresser. It was lovely, expertly crafted and looked quite smooth. This must have been Phoebe's present for her. She wondered what made the perpetual, 3-day late card giver decide to get her a present this year. Picking up the box, she moved over to the bed and sat on it. She wasn't quite sure what to expect. The box was rather quite large. Opening it, the first thing that caught her notice was an envelope, and upon opening she began reading its contents. Prue, I look back upon the years and realize how much things have changed. I think back to all the fights and arguments growing up and how we never got along. Now that I think back when I first arrived back here that fateful day all those weeks ago, I realized that I wasn't sure what to expect. I ran off to NYC and didn't take into consideration how much I would miss everything I left, and I'm so sorry that I didn't consider how my actions must have hurt all of you. You were there for me not only as my sister and friend, but you practically raised me, so I wanted to give something back. I know how much you love photography and how hurt I was when I broke your camera, so I hope this makes up for it. Love, Phoebe. Prue had to brush away the tears that ran down her face. She placed the card down on her bed and now more than ever couldn't wait to see what was in the box. She had to push back a gasp as she opened the camera bag to see it was her old camera. A few years ago, Phoebe had borrowed it without asking and ended up breaking it. What made it so a heated argument was the fact that the camera was one of the few mementos she had from their mother. After placing the camera back in the bag, she went to get some tissue to wipe away the tears. She placed the bag back in the box and placed it on the dresser. She went into the kitchen where Phoebe was and practically squeezed her younger sister with the hug. Thank you. I love it. I'm sorry. I didn't know what I was thinking. I guess. I was feeling a little jealous you had something mom gave you that you could remember and I didn't consider how much it meant to you. Phoebe wrapped her arms around Prue's neck. Happy birthday, Prue. I hope this makes up for all the late birthday cards. Thank you, Phoebe. It more than makes up for it, sweetie. The two of them sat a moment only for a flash to go off, startling them. Sorry. It was just too good a moment to pass up. Piper responded as she lowered the digital camera. A memory that should definitely be kept with us. A mischievous smile formed on Phoebe's face. Speaking of which, you'll never guess what I caught Prue doing earlier. Phoebe.